This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Jeff Siadek in the third chair.
Life is a cooperative game.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of an alien bug being prodded along by a brain in a jar. Today's edition is brought to you by all of the fine men and women over at Patreon who are patrons of the show and make it all happen. Today I'd like to thank Sam E., Benjamin, Bob King, Richard Hudson, and John Mitchell. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ Remo Williams Wakelin and game designer extraordinaire, the Bravo of the Battlestations, Jeff Sky Captain Siadek. Let's begin. Issue number 1. Throughout history, the same order, in one variation or another, has rang out over the decks and throughout the compartments of warships all over the world as they prepare to engage the enemy in bloody, decisive conflict. Whether you heard General Quarters, Battle Stations, Action Stations, or Prepare at Bellum, you knew things were about to get hot. Question. In Starfleet, what was the code, also known as intruder alert, that was called when the ship's security had been compromised and an intruder has boarded the ship? Alexander Rashenko Russ.
1111.
Michael Jonas Jeff.
Red alert.
That is incorrect. It is Security Condition 3. I thought that was a giveaway with this crowd. Makes you both wrong. Issue number 2. In the Star Trek fictional universe, an away team is a term used by Starfleet for an extravehicular operation to another spacecraft or to the surface of a planet. The operations manager officer, ops, helps to coordinate the away team. Away teams usually feature at least one red shirt. Question. What was the term in the original series that was replaced by the term away team on Star Trek The Next Generation? Commander Rand Russ.
Ground team.
Lieutenant Commander Jordy Jeff.
I'm going to say with Go Team.
Oh, team. We got so stuck on the word team. Landing party. I would have also accepted boarding party. Oh, guys, come on. You are hardly doing the Trekkies any sort of justice. Issue number 3. Themes are defined as the subject of a talk, a piece of writing, a person's thoughts, or an exhibition. A topic. It is further considered to be the main idea or driving concept or unified thought of a piece of work, be it a novel, a movie, or a game. Themes can range from anything like saving the universe to medieval subsistence farming. Question. On a scale of 1 through 10, with 1 being medieval subsistence farming and 10 being saving the entire universe from a spectacular special effects-laden doom, what would you rate the theme of the 2000 strategy board game extravaganza, Blocus? Rhombus Russ.
I would rate it a 2.
Square Siadek.
0.
Oh, come on. Guys, seriously, I'm trying to give you something to work with here. Quite clearly, the answer is blue. Honestly, I can't help you. And either at this point, you're both wrong. Issue number 4, the first golden age of science fiction, often recognized as the period from 1938 to 1946, was an era during which the science fiction genre gained wide public attention and many classic science fiction stories were published. Question. Many believe the dawn of the golden age began with the July and August issues of what? Popular Sci-Fi magazine, which featured the first published stories of A.E. Van Vogt and Robert A. Heinlein, and the first appearance of Isaac Asimov in that magazine. Ross Rocklin Russ.
Amazing stories.
John Christopher Jeff.
Astounding Tales.
Oh, so close. We can put it all together and maybe we get close if we squint. Astounding science fiction.
Oh, nice.
You
try.
shouldn't even get credit for missing that one. That's it for now. Thanks for listening and good night.
This episode of the D6 generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
Hello!
Hello.
Hey, and welcome to episode 186, Craig.
186. There's like a mathematical equation in there. There's so many numbers.
There is, of the D6 generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
I'm Jeff Siadek.
Hey, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Siadek! That would be my attempt to do a Battlestations horn.
Jeff,
Yes.
the man behind many a game, but my personal favorite, Battlestations. And we're very excited to have Jeff here on the show. Jeff, you've just completed a successful Kickstarter of Battlestations 2, right?
Yes.
Battlestations 2. So we're excited about that. So we're going to talk to Jeff about that. And, of course, later, because we've got some sort of sci-fi spacecraft theme going on here, we thought we'd also review Space Cadets Away Missions, that kooky game of dungeon crawlings in the golden age of sci-fi, right? Is basically what's happening there. But before we get to all that excitement, we have a few things we should talk about, Craig.
Yes, we need to clear the air, if you will.
One of which is Adepticon is coming. It's the week you hear the show. Craig and I will be pretty much winging our way to the pizza-laden realm of Chicago, right?
Woo! Cannot get enough of that pizza.
Cannot. Very excited. Jeff, have you been to Chicago?
I fly through there sometimes, and I stop to get a pizza from the Chicago Airport Pizza, and let me tell you, that is not Chicago pizza. Whatever everybody's raving about, that's not it.
That is not it. No. So here's the thing. They got to figure this out in Chicago. So in Texas, in the airport, in Austin, Texas, there is a Salt Lick restaurant, which actually is some of the best barbecue in Texas, actually in the airport. So they need to figure this out in Chicago. We need a Gianni's or somebody's got to be in the airport in Chicago giving actual Chicago deep dish pizza, because it is a crime.
That's right.
It is a crime. But in any case, so Craig, you and I are going to be there in Chicago.
We are.
Now, what
Eating
armies?
lots of pizza.
What armies are you bringing? What
Pizza.
What models are you going to bring?
Geez, I don't know, Russ. We haven't really discussed this. I feel like I'm being put on the spot. We have discussed the potential of bringing Beyond the Gates of Antares.
Yes.
We've discussed the potential of bringing Planetfall.
Yes.
Was brought up at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to bring Guild Ball, I would imagine,
Yeah,
because
there you
that's
go.
really easy to transport.
Yeah, lots of stuff. So we're going to bring several armies. We will play folks, whoever we run into. Plus, we are going to host, of course, our big annual.
Wait. This really calls
Go
for
for
it.
it. Go for it.
The Adepticon. Ooh, that's really super loud. The Adepticon board game night. Oh, that was pathetic. I apologize. You guys deserve better than that. That was just ridiculous.
In any case, we'll be doing our Adepticon board game night on Sunday night after all the hullabaloo and tournaments die down. You're looking for something to relax. Maybe you've been kicked out of the early round of the poker tournament. Whatever the case, come on by our area, play some board games. There will be prizes. There'll be board games. There'll be crazy D6G swag. And, of course, Craig and I there trying to lead some sort of organized
Ringmastering
event.
the whole
Right.
thing. And we don't look down on you if you chose to go the poker route and then got kicked out in the first round.
Once you're parted with your
Come
money,
join us.
you'll be back with us. That's right. That's exactly.
It's a lot less painful to lose at the board game night.
It is. All you lose is your dignity. So,
That's
yeah.
And
so
if you
come
went
on
to
down.
the poker and you got kicked out of that early, you've already lost that.
And
So
really-
there's no cost.
And if you're in the Chicago area, you need to go to Adepticon. It is one of the, if not the premier miniature gaming event
It is.
in
It
the
is
country. I feel
the
it
premier
is.
miniature gaming convention in the country.
I agree.
I think without a
for
doubt.
sure. So, hope to see you there. Also, we ran into Jeff last week or so at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes, at a very strange time space sort of confluence, Dunkin' Donuts. It was quite intriguing.
It was. Jeff,
Yes.
do you remember what we talked about at Dunkin' Donuts?
I think we talked about the cinnamon roll. The coffee roll was actually a cinnamon roll. That's the main thing.
Well, that was the bulk of the discussion, to be honest.
I mean,
Yes.
we had to cover the important stuff.
We did. But then we also talked about other things, though. Do you remember those other topics?
Yeah, of course. We talked a little bit about battle stations, about themes of games, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it was really how mundane themes can be saved by good mechanics, right?
Right.
was generally the topic, and I think we talked about that somewhat, at least, at some point in there. So if you're interested in those sorts of things and getting an extra half an hour or so of D6 generation discussion, Craig, how do people go about getting their hands on the Lost Chapters?
Well, the best way all around for everybody is to become a patron over at Patreon. You go over there, you check out our little video. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to pledge an amount of money to sort of support the show, and it comes out automatically every full episode, so twice a month, and you can put in limits there just in case we all of a sudden decide to do a cash grab and then run for the border. We wouldn't be able to do that. So if you pledge $2 or more to support the show each episode, you will have unlocked the entire vault of Lost Chapters.
And it is a vault. There's a lot of episodes there now. It's
If
like
4 hours every other week is not enough for you for free,
right.
You support the show for $2 an episode or more, and you get access to another half hour to 45 minutes.
Yeah,
every other week.
Over 100 episodes now, those things, which is
That's
insane.
crazy.
Really, when you
There's
think about
crazy. It's craziness.
So, yes. So, there you have it. So, hopefully you'll help us out with that. But, Craig, what's the time now for?
Time now for Achievements in Gaming.
It is indeed. And Achievements in Gaming is, of course, brought to us by all of our fine patrons over at Patreon.
Which we have already explained.
Yes, and without whom's patronage, this show would not be possible.
The show would certainly not be possible.
So, what have you been playing lately, Jeff?
Most recently, I have been playing a lot of Grizzled and a little bit of Little Drop of Poison. 10 Days in the USA with the Family. A game by Joey Vigor that he's calling Banana Peel because there's a license involved and we can't talk about it. And I just got beat this weekend by my brother at a game of Titan, which is my all-time favorite game, and my brother beat me and it makes me all-time sad.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with Titan, since it's your all-time favorite, give us a little high-level overview. What is your favorite game, Titan?
It's a game where you're recruiting monsters as you move around this board, and your monsters make your armies bigger and better, and you recruit better monsters. And then when you meet somebody else on the board, then you go to a little mini board and do out a little tactical battle.
Ooh,
so it's just so slick and fun, and it's really where I learned most of what I know about tactical combat.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
And Grizzled, of course, was the big hit at Gamma that was actually pulling you out of your hotel room while we were recording.
Yes, it was. It was, and you know what? Now that I've played it again a bunch of times, I still love it, but I'm finding that its sweet spot of balance is 3 players tend to win, and 2 players almost can't win. We haven't won yet at 2 players, and 4 players is really hard. So I'm wondering if they didn't really, if they could have taken maybe one more iteration to say, with fewer players, you start with more cards or fewer cards or something.
Right. Balance that out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think locally it's always been played with 4, so that might be why they're having such a hard time.
Yeah.
Could be. Well, Craig, what about you, sir?
Well, Russ, I played Guild Ball versus Dave, and Dave had his brewers that he got for working at Captain Con all painted up and ready to go. I used my Mortician's Guild again, and this was the first full-size game I've played in a while because I've been doing a lot of training games to try to get people interested and excited. And Dave, of course, is a pundit, which is what they call their sort of
representatives,
their outreach people. And it was a game where Dave has a much better grasp of the game than I do, and he had never played with his team before, though. I don't have as much of a grasp of the game as I do, but I've been playing with these Morticians and losing with them badly for months now. And I was behind. I was on the ropes. And then all of a sudden, in literally, I think, 10 minutes, it was like a 2.5-hour game because we weren't timing it because neither of us knew it enough to time it. In about 15 minutes, everything turned, and I went from 2 points down to winning by killing a bunch of guys and scoring 1 goal. I feel like if you win a game of Guild Ball without scoring even a single goal, it's kind of like cheating. It feels kind of like cheating. But if you score 1 goal and then you get the rest of your points from eliminating the other guy's players, then it feels like it's legit.
There you go.
That was good. So that was fun.
Nice.
Excuse me. Played away missions. Had a bunch of people over to the house, and it wasn't PattyCon. I think I'll explain that later because I think that bears some explaining that I'd rather not waste time here doing. But it was a blast. Played away missions, full 6-player game. We had a blast. We had a full Luchador tournament.
Woo.
That was a blast. We had a full Hex tournament. That was great. We had a High Heavens challenge that was amazing, that was cross-generational and cross-familial. So that was awesome seeing that. to the point where actually I just got off the phone with Joe, who just received all of his High Heavens minis and Pantheons and needed to know how to straighten all the rubbery plastic. So that's a third set locally right now that is all straight, ready to go.
Great game.
And it is a great game, still fun.
Kids love that one, too. It's a great game for all ages. All of our kids love that one.
It was a great game, and it was people of all ages playing at my little thing, too, so that was fun. And then finished up the night with party games because most of the people had left at that point, and so we played Cranium, and it was Andy and I versus Dave's wife and Andy's girlfriend, Melissa, and Karen. And so you would think that we had this great, with this burden that we had to fight through, but we won handily, so that was good.
Good.
And then we played Say Anything, which is a weird party game that is kind of like Apples to Apples.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun. That was it was a really fun, low key way to wind up a long day of gaming that was really a blast, and had over a bunch of people that that mean a lot to me. It was great. But that's all. What about you, Russ?
Well, the D&D 5e Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign that I started with my 2 daughters, my niece and nephew, and my brother is still ongoing.
Excellent.
And so we played another session of that.
Great.
Had a great time after Craig's big gathering, and it's still a good time, and it's so much fun to see all the kids getting into that still and being able to share that across generations. So really enjoying that. Did play away missions. I've actually played 2 games. I played a solo mission to learn the game, and then I played the big 6-player one at Craig's house, and we'll talk more about that later. Also continuing to play my War Machine battles versus my oldest daughter, Rose. I have won again, and I brag about this because if we look at the overall record between myself and my 13-year-old daughter over the past couple of years, I am down. I lose more than I win against her. So and we've been starting to play the Steamroller tournament format, which has been a lot of fun, and she's really enjoying that because she feels like her circle is better in Steamroller with the objectives. So that's been going really well. Played our Imperial Assault campaign is continuing to go, although the player group is getting smaller. We continued another campaign game. We've got 2 left, but only 2 of my players showed up, and they played the rest of the characters. They each ran multiple characters, but still having a blast with that. And played another game of Antares with a local player at Adler Hobby, Sean, who's in the league there. Had a great game with him as well. He's what a nice player. I feel bad because he's still learning, and my Gar are kind of hard to beat unless you really kind of know the game well. And so I keep kind of defeating him, and I feel bad because he's such a nice guy, and he's so gracious about it. And I'm like, Sean, I'm happy to play again. He's like, hey, I'm in. And I feel bad because he's still learning. But he's got everything C3 makes painted. So he's got the skimmers. He's got all the stuff. He's got the X howitzer, good stuff. And I was neat to see he's starting to play around with and you were 2 of the entanglement shells, and those are really nasty. So some neat stuff happening there. So that was that. What about modeling? Now, Jeff, do you do any modeling?
I do almost no modeling, but for the Battlestations project, I picked up a 3D printer.
Ooh.
And so I had been printing out little 3D miniatures, which aren't as good as because I could only get one that was about $1,000.
Right.
And so it's not the high quality. Mm-hmm. It's really fun when it works, and when it doesn't work, it's a really big pain. Mm-hmm. So I was just tinkering with it again today to get it to print out some little Zoolans that just look like, they look, let's just say you'd flush them if you saw them somewhere.
Well, that's what I've heard about 3D printing is it's a lot of fun, but they're very fiddly still at this point. The printing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been fun with the Battlestations. I haven't done really much miniature stuff before. My brother worked on the miniatures for the 15mm miniatures for Battlestations, and so getting the sculpts from professional sculptors for Battlestations has been a real treat, especially because it's in 28mm, so it gets to have a lot more detail. And so it was fun to be able to say, oh, no, put, like they put med kits in each of this guy's hands. And I would say, no, you're not going to ever have 2 med kits at once. That's crazy. You might have 2 guns at once, but nobody John Woo, fires med kits with 2 hands at the same time. That just doesn't happen.
I feel like that could be a thing, though. I feel like you could design a whole game rule around 2 twin-linked med kits.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, that sounds neat. Craig, how about yourself? What have you been doing for modeling?
Well, with the pub in disarray and everything that was going on for the last couple of weeks, I haven't done a lot, but I have been working on those TT Combat buildings from that British company, the MDF buildings, and they're slowly but surely coming along nicely. I got a few of those to try to test them out for the new Marvel Universe miniatures game by Night Models over in Spain. And those models just came in yesterday, so I'm super excited. Sadly, as I am gathering, is true of a great many of the packages that just came out. Poor Drax the Destroyer is bodiless at the moment.
Oh dear!
So it is currently Drax's left or right leg and 2 hands with knives.
Now, how's the quality of the models? Are you liking
They
it?
are gorgeous.
Oh, nice, good.
They're like you were worried about the scales and stuff. The scales on Cap's torso are all there.
Oh, nice. So there's lots of texture and stuff to paint.
Lots of texture and detail, although it is spandex, admittedly. So there are also large areas that are really flat and smooth.
Yeah. That's all right. They got the
But
level of detail and scale.
where there is texture on the actual costumes, there is actual texture.
Nice. That's awesome. Great.
And so I'm excited to I think I'm going to go a little crazy. Our friend Christian pointed out that there's like 8 sets of all of the same models right now because all they have are the Guardians of the Galaxy, the X-Men. There's five models per set. So there's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is weird because they have they don't have Groot. They have a comic book character that wasn't Groot. So it's weird. They have all of the main characters, but not Groot.
Not Groot? That feels like a huge oversight.
It wasn't. I don't know what was going on.
I feel like you could convert a Groot pretty easily from a Treant or something.
Yeah, I would guess. But then you don't have any of the stats.
Right.
But excuse me, I don't know what's going on here.
Okay.
So then the Avengers and the X-Men. So there's the 3 main kind of groups right now that are in the popular culture, and we all have the same exact minis. So I'm going to try to shake things up at least with the bases because they come with awesome textured bases too.
That's cool. Very cool.
That was me.
All right. Well, thanks to my recent wins in War Machine, I thought it was time to finish up my Hammersmith, who's been mostly done, but I didn't finish any of the detailing or his base, so I did that. He earned his paint, and he seems to be nigh unstoppable against my daughter now that he's all painted, so that's been good news. Also, I finally started work. I primed my command crawler last time, but now I've started actually painting it. It's a bit intimidating because there's lots of little metal panels there, and my paint scheme for my GAR is alternating metal reds and beiges, and so a lot of work there, but I'm really liking even the small area I've got done. I'm liking how it's going to look, and I can't wait to finish it. I'm hoping to have it done before Adepticon, so that's my goal, which is only a little over a week left.
That's ambitious.
I got to finish that up. Also picked up, because Rose and I are playing a lot more War Machine, and we're playing a lot of the Steamroller events, those missions all have objectives and flag markers, and there are actually official War Machine objective markers, so which are look like little piles of loot crates and bits of equipment for building warjacks and stuff. So I picked up a box of those and been priming those, and we're starting to paint those. Rose and I are working on this together also. So
yeah, those are cool models.
A lot of little things on the table there, which is good. What about other random geeky goodness like books, TV shows, movies, video games? So Jeff, what have you been doing in those areas?
Well, I am proud to say that my wife and I finished watching Downton Abbey recently, which is really funny because I love Agricola, which is subsistence farming, and so what could be better than that but a show about the servants in a household in stuffy England in the 20s
There
and 30s.
you go. I'm sensing
like
a theme.
I feel like there's a Euro game in there someplace that hasn't been made yet, but there should be the Downton Abbey themed Euro. Now my wife, I must admit I have never become hooked on Downton Abbey, but my wife became a huge fan. Were you happy with the conclusion?
I was, it's funny, without being too much of a spoiler, they tend to hand out some happy endings to everybody. And the happy endings, even, it seems like they pull random characters in off the street to give them a happy ending. And it's almost ridiculous, but after watching the suffering for so many years, you feel like, oh, good, yeah, we want to see that guy end up happy. So it's bizarre, because if they would have done this at the end of the first season, I just would have laughed at it and said, oh, it's ridiculous. You can't have every happy person get married off and live happily ever after. But by the 5th or 6th season or whatever it is, they did it, and I said, "Oh, good! I'm glad for everybody."
Yeah, Nicole was kind of like, "Oh, thank God, everybody's happy." Woo! I was worried someone was going to die in the end or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about it, what happens to that? What must happen to that family is that they're no longer a landed family after World War II, and the happy little youngsters that you see there are the prime age to go off and die under, to Hitler's guns.
Right.
And so they're marching off into a very uncertain future, but they've got their moment of joy while they have it.
Right.
And then, then also I've been playing a fair bit of Minecraft. I use the excuse to play it with my daughter. Then when she goes to bed, I sometimes have to say, well, okay, she's gone to bed, so I'll finish out. I'll just play another 6 hours, and then I'll go to bed, too.
Right. That's rational. I get it, yeah.
Yeah. And I am reading right now Fatal Shore about the founding of Australia, and it was pretty brutal, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so. That's awesome. Great.
Excellent.
Good stuff. So what's your favorite bit about Fatal? Is Fatal Shore it's obviously nonfiction, or is it fictionalized a little bit?
Yeah, it's total nonfiction, and the idea is that right after the Revolutionary War in America, England stopped having places to send their undesirables off to go be somewhere else. So they were piling up in these ships, these hulks they would call them, on the Thames, and eventually they said, "Oh, well, we've got to go colonize someplace else." And somebody had come back, and I only read it last week, so I should know this, but it came back with a kind of favorable report of Australia saying, "Oh, look, you could use this place as a jumping-off point to go to Asia and all kinds of things. And we don't want the French to get a hold of it, so let's colonize it." And then when the colony ships eventually got there, the people that were sent were some of them were foragers, but most of them were people that just were common criminals. So their skills were stealing bread, that kind of thing, not nation building. So it was a lot of starvation in the first couple of years that they were there, and the way that they were kept with Marines that would keep them in check, and the Marines would beat people up, and the people would fight back, and if they fought back, then they'd get whipped, and it was just really, really tough. And it's uplifting to me to think of, I have never met an Australian that I don't like, and so to think that what you do is if you take your worst people and send them off to an island, and in the process, by the way, there's a genocide against the Aborigines, which I don't like, but anyway, you do that and then leave them there for a couple of centuries, and you end up with some people with a cool accent and attractive tans.
Right. So
there you go. Sounds like a recipe for success.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's awesome. Craig, what about you, sir?
Well, funny you should ask. I restarted Discworld, the books, the Terry Pratchett books, and I have to say that man is a genius, and those books stand the test of time.
They are. He's amazing. I love it.
I started reading those when I was in high school. Almost everything I started reading in high school I can't touch now because it's just not very good, and I thought I loved it back then.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Pratchett is just amazing. I'm still laughing out loud every book. I love it. I can tear up. I can tear up and crack up all in the same book. It's great. Excuse me. And my mute button's not working, and I apologize.
That's all right. I could tell. Have you read? The only thing that I have read over and over again was Corwin. Now I'm drawing a blank on it because I've read it so many times. Amber Chronicles of Amber.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, yes. If you even scratch a little bit at what I just said, you'll find it's patently false, and I love a lot of the stuff that I read in high school.
Okay, good.
And Roger Zelazny's Amber series is one of the ones that I love and keep going back to as well. And I'm having a retro time with my books. I'm listening to the whole Expanse series again by James S.A. Corey. And I just got to Cibola Burn, the 4th book, which I kind of talked down the last time. And now that I'm listening to them back to back, all in a row, I have to say the story for Cibola Burn is better than I remembered it. But the narration, which is a different guy, and I hate when they do that, and the narration is worse than I remembered.
Don't do that, Audible. Don't.
No, I don't. I mean, maybe it's a contract thing. Maybe the other guy wasn't available. You need to wait.
Right.
Especially when you have a great reader, you cannot, even if this guy was awesome, and he's not bad for the most part, although he has, there's some characters that have accents that make no sense and other words are mispronounced based on the other guy. I mean, it could be the other guy who's mispronouncing the names, but they're established now. You've got to listen to the other. Here's a piece of advice from people who are doing audible narration, because I know there's a few out there. If you're jumping into the middle of a series and somebody else has already done it, you have to listen to what they all did. Okay? There's no space for you to be creative. You are going to fail. This is not your, creativity.
That's my alarm sounding, saying that we cannot have people doing narration without listening to it first.
Exactly. That was the Battlestations alert.
Right.
You need to, so that all those things. And so that's what I think. It's a different story. It's a departure. Absolutely. It's a totally different. I mean, everything about it feels different. But the writing's just as good. The characters are just as good. They're there. And it's mainly, I think, the narration. Movies. I went and saw Deadpool again. Just last night. I had a very strange game night. It's the second game night in a little over a month where I didn't play any games. Instead, went to a restaurant by myself, ate a fine meal, and then went to the movies. And it might have even been Deadpool that I saw the last time too, which would be ironic, but I don't think so. Deadpool, of course, is great, and it just keeps getting funnier every time I see it. Karen and I went and saw 10 Cloverfield Lane. I feel like I tricked her, because she kept saying, "Oh, it looks great, but I don't know. I have a sneaky suspicion there's going to be like stupid sci-fi at the end." And I, who knew there was going to be some stupid sci-fi at the end, just kept my mouth shut, assuming that the movie was going to be great because of the reviews. And boy, was I wrong.
No.
I can't remember the exact haiku, but I think I'm going to start doing this thing, haiku review, on Twitter, which I did when I saw 10 Cloverfield Lane. And basically the theme of the haiku was save yourself the time, go walking down a country lane, then go home and watch the original Cloverfield 10 times. You'll get a lot more entertainment than you will by watching 10 Cloverfield Lane, which betrays itself on so many different levels that I can't even begin to tell you. And every time people tell me that is John Goodman's greatest performance ever, and he's gonna get an Oscar, it's the first Oscar-worthy performance. Honestly, maybe they're seeing a different movie. I don't know. I think there's a lot of The Emperor Has No Clothes going on there, where everybody's seeing it and going, "Oh, this is what everybody's talking about? Maybe it's just me." No, I loved it. It was great, because I don't want to be the only one who says it wasn't. So that was ridiculous. Very, very disappointed in 10 Cloverfield Lane. For television, Longmire, which, of course, I've been watching on Netflix, which moved to Netflix in season 4. I was all excited. I don't pay any attention when I'm watching something on Netflix to the episode number. So when it ended with this great big cliffhanger, I was like, "Oh, can't wait to watch the next episode." But Karen came home from work, so I didn't get to start the next episode, so I turned it off. I didn't get back to it for a week, and I got back to it for a week, and I was like, how come Longmire disappeared from my queue? Well, turns out when you've watched the last episode of something, it disappears from your queue. That's right. The last episode that was made for Longmire was a complete cliffhanger.
Oh.
Good news is that Netflix just announced that they're actually picking it up, and right now they're filming the next season, which will be coming out in September. But I was like, whoa, seriously, you can't just end there. Walking Dead, I'm having a very strange relationship with Walking Dead ever since I actually finished reading all the comics up to date. I don't feel a driving need to watch the show anymore. I honestly feel that the comic, which was boring for the first 16 or so trade paperbacks, got really interesting for me in the last 8 or so trade paperbacks. So I'm really enjoying that story, and I find it a lot more compelling than a TV show, which has a lot more explosions and wildly improbable rescues at the last minute. There's really none of that in the comic. The comic is a lot more realistic, if you will, and so I don't really feel the compelling, the compulsion to watch it that I used to. At the same time, I was interested. There's a major event that occurs in the comic book that kills off a major character. And I was intrigued to see how they would deal with something like that now that I knew what was coming. And so in the comic book, it's a very specific event that occurs where this character is with a certain amount of other characters doing a very certain thing. And what I noticed was all this second half of the season of The Walking Dead, they had that character with similar groups of characters doing similar events over and over again, but not culminating in that death.
Yeah, right.
It was very intriguing. And then
so they were trying to dial you up and get you excited about it.
Exactly.
Right.
So that was very intriguing to see. I think they have their pacing off. I think there's entire episodes that really don't need to happen. But what they end up with, the payoff they end up getting is actually still pretty darn cool. And it was a totally different character that ends up having something similar happen to them. But it was really cool to watch how they handled it. Sort of like tongue-in-cheek, knowing what they were doing to the readers of the comic, where if you had never read the comic, it wouldn't cost you anything. You weren't not enjoying the show because all these cool events were still happening. But as a reader of the comic, you were kind of like, oh, here it goes. Oh, no. Oh, no, here it goes. Oh, God, no. And then at the same time, they still had that payoff, but it was in a different way with different people. So it was very cool. Loved the end of this season of Agent Carter. Thought it was really cool. Really like that show still. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. still great. Really like that. And tried to start watching Daredevil today, and my schedule just got ahead of me. So I watched the first 10 minutes. Can't wait to get back to it as soon as I can because that show, I think, is still really cool. And that's me, Russ. What about you?
Well, I can segue nicely off Daredevil. Awesome! I'm in episode 4 now.
Oh, cool.
Nicole's been traveling, so we have to watch it together, so we haven't watched a lot, but oh my God, is it good. Just as good as season 1. I love what they did with the Punisher. Oh my God, he's awesome.
Awesome.
Is it as good as Jessica Jones?
Yes. So I like both Daredevil and Jessica Jones. So
I like Daredevil. I love Jessica Jones.
Me too, but I think they had the crossover, right? So there hasn't been, except for the nurse character, there hasn't been any other crossovers, although she mentions sort of references Luke. But yeah, it's just as good. Punisher, so one of the cool things about Jessica Jones is sort of the morality play going on. Well, not really morality, but the evilness of the villain and sort of the complexity of the villain. And so they do that really well with Punisher in just the first 3 episodes. So the whole thing is really, really good. And how the city is starting to fall apart, taking out the main bad guy in season 1 has sort of, taken out Kingpin, putting him behind bars, has sort of caused a lot of problems. Smaller gangs are moving in now, and the city's getting to be a mess, and whose fault is what, and how are the heroes really heroes? The whole thing's really interesting, so good stuff.
Good.
Also, I've got my whole family now, so I was really enjoying the Iron Druid Chronicles. Recommended them to my oldest daughter. She is now blasting through the books. Finally got Nicole to try them. I said, you got to try this. You like Harry Dresden? Dresden. She's like, I don't want another Dresden. Dresden's what it is. Oh, okay, I'll try the first book. Boom, she's hooked. She's blasting through it.
It's not Dresden. It's a similar theme, but it's
concept,
not the same.
But it's not at all the same. Really like that. So we're enjoying that. And I managed to sneak in an Oberon reference in my latest D&D campaign, which my daughters thought was hilarious.
You have a big giant dog?
Well, no. So the situation was my youngest daughter is actually a druid. And so she's in the tavern, and she's trying to overhear what's happening in another room. And she had this bright idea. She's like, hey, is there any dogs in the tavern? I said, yes, there is. She goes, okay, I'm going to try to convince the dog to leave the tavern, and then I'll shapeshift into a dog, and then they'll think it's the dog in the tavern. I can go in and listen to what's going on. And I said, okay, what do you want to say to the dog? And so she says, please go away. I'll give you some bacon. And I did the whole Oberon thing. I want bacon and French poodles and sausage. So that was pretty funny. Anyway, so that was good. And then also, so I've been watching this new reality show.
Yeah.
And, okay, so here's what you need to imagine. So imagine a cooking show where each episode, the cooks come in, and there's like 4 of them, and they have to compete in 3 rounds. And in the first round, 1 cook is eliminated. In the second round, the second cook is eliminated. And in the third round, the 2 remaining cooks go head-to-head for a big final finish, right?
Yeah. Right.
Classic cooking show. They all work the same way. Now, they're not cooks. They're blacksmiths. And so in the first round, you have 3 hours to forge a blade, but they always give them the weirdest metals to start with. Like one time it's like a coil spring from a car, shock absorber or something, or a train spring. Another time it's like different pieces of metal. So now I know where Ren Fair blacksmiths go when they're not actually at Ren Fairs. But it's really fascinating. And in the final round, they give them something really hard to make. They actually let them go back to their home forges, and they have a week to make something. Last episode, it was a chakram from like Xena. Like they had to go back and make a working chakram, and then they have like a martial arts expert there that actually tests the weapons. And so they have like that, the same sort of dummies that like used to make in MythBusters, made out of like the gelatin stuff with like guts inside of them, and they'll try to cut them or throw the chakrams at them and stuff. And the weirdest thing is sort of the martial artist who always looks at the contestants with a little gleam in his eye and says, "Oh yeah, it'll kill." So I find this show strangely fascinating. Both my daughters are addicted to it now because you learn a lot about the art of blacksmithing. It's really actually a pretty cool show. So check it out, Forged in Fire. It's actually on season 2 now. I'm watching it on demand, but yeah, it's pretty
I wouldn't think you would have 2 seasons worth of stuff to do. I mean, cooking shows, there's lots of different stuff you can cook, but how many knives can you make?
Well, each episode, the first 2 parts are sort of the same. The first battle is over making a blade out of something really hard to make. And then, but they'll always make like, it must be a certain length and it must have, be serrated this time, or it must have a runnel on it or whatever. And then in the second challenge, they have to add a handle and finish whatever they didn't get right in the blade. And then in the third challenge, they send them back home and make something crazy. So one time it was a chakram, one time it was a Viking axe. So they're making them make different crazy things. One time it was a katana, and then when they brought the katanas back, they mounted them and fired a bullet at the katana, and the katana had to split the bullet. Like all kinds of. It's really pretty cool. I mean, you can check this thing.
Yeah,
out.
That's probably just my ignorance that I don't know. There's lots of different kinds of blades.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's all kinds of weird stuff. So check if you have any interested in fantasy or in weaponry, and it's funny too because one guy made like an axe that looked like you'd be out of Mad Max. It was just really crazy stuff. So pretty cool. I'm enjoying that.
Oh, sounds fun.
In video games, so I was playing XCOM 2. I did report a couple of bugs with it. But they released a patch last early March that seems to have solved all the problems, so that's good to know. If you like XCOM, check out XCOM 2. It's great. Also, though, went a little old school. A game called Age of Wonder 3 came out a couple years ago, and I picked this up on Steam and been playing it with my daughters, and they love it. This game is basically if Warhammer Fantasy Battles had a campaign mode, and then when you went to fight, it put all the units on the table and you could fight them, but it was a good version of a computer game, this would be it. It is excellent. There's so many different factions and a whole world, and you can recruit everything from fairies and unicorns to dragons and undead and all kinds of. It's really amazing.
Cool.
It's a great time sink, but it's also fun if you have daughters to play with. So it's a lot of fun. So I'm enjoying Age of Wonders 3. So
excellent.
Is that achievements?
That is achievements.
This is the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com.
Ooh, that exceptionally good wolf sound means, of course, it's time to talk about our friends at wolflair.com. That's right, the boys and girls over at Lone Wolf Development making my 3 favorite pieces of gaming software. Do you know what those are, Craig?
I'm going to say Realmworks.
That's one of them.
I'm going to say Hero Lab.
That's number 2.
And I'm going to say old school Army Builder.
Army Builder, still new school as well, man. You want to get your Army Builder Army
but it was
updated.
The first.
It was the first, and
foundation.
Still the best. For 40K, Flames of War, War Machine, you name it, your miniature game is handled in Army Builder. Quick and easy way to build your list, but that's not all. My favorite thing now, between Realmworks and Hero Lab, I can't decide. Realmworks is a great way as a GM to organize your entire world, your entire campaign.
Oh, yeah. And keep it at your fingertips. Anytime your party wants to revisit something, you've got it all right there.
And I love, sometimes as a GM, you try to figure out the best way to sequence events. And some people like to do flow charts or timelines. But with Realmworks, it's awesome. You can take your favorite map, either you draw it or maybe take a picture out of a module or some other supplement, put it right into Realmworks, and then pin different adventure locations right on your map. So as the party travels along the land and gets near your pins, you click the pin, gives you all the information about the encounter, links out to various treasure items and monsters. It's fantastic. And now, Craig, Hero Lab just added the D&D 5th edition SRD, which basically means Dungeons & Dragons is now fully integrated with all your favorite Wolflair products.
Wow.
And up until recently, it was only possible to enjoy the Hero Lab for iPad for Pathfinder, but now you can also use it for D&D 5th edition. So a fantastic way to experience D&D on your favorite tablets. right there from your friends at Lone Wolf Development through Hero Lab.
And that can't be overstated. The folks at Wolf Lair, at Lone Wolf Development, they're not only working on this software, they're constantly working on bringing in new partners for all the RPG stuff and expanding that. It's just amazing.
They really are. So check it all out. Head on over to wolflair.com. And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present... Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep. Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap. Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, and welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, I want to talk about a game I'm pretty excited about, although I must admit it may be tainted with a bit of nostalgia. And that, of course, is the upcoming real-time strategy space combat game, Battlefleet Gothic Armada. Now, any Games Workshop fan out there knows the words Battlefleet Gothic together mean pretty much epic sci-fi combat. The new video game coming out here, the release date is April 23rd on Steam, so a little less than a month from now here. And what looks great about it so far is you can pre-purchase it. I have pre-purchased it. When you pre-purchase, you get early access to the beta multiplayer, which also features a single-player skirmish mode where you can just fight AI. First of all, the graphics are quite impressive. Really love the graphics, love the look. They really captured the feel of Battlefleet Gothic. There are going to be 4 playable fleets when the game releases. The Imperium, the Chaos, the Orcs, and the Eldar. And in the playable demo right now, 3 of those fleets are playable. So you can play the Imperium, you can play the Orcs, and you can play Chaos. You cannot play the Eldar yet, but their little thing is grayed out, but they're getting there. Sound effects are great. As I said, the graphics are cool. The little bit I've played looks fantastic. You can level up your ships. You can level up your components. You can level up your crew. So there's definitely a really nice campaign mode going on there. Everything is fully realized on the ship. So each variant of the cruisers and all the vessels change, right? So that you can see the components change. You can hover over the different component elements. They highlight and light up as you improve the ships. They really a lot of great attention to detail here. Also fantastic voice work, audio, sound. I mean, the whole thing looks fantastic. I'm a little nervous. Gameplay is sort of real-time strategy naval, right? So you click where you want your ship to go. The game keeps moving. You can fire different weapon systems. Most of them fire automatically. You can basically click the various orders that you would normally have used to order dice in Battlefleet Gothic 4. And they work pretty much as expected. It works pretty well. There's not enough yet to really know if it's going to have legs and really be super playable, if it's going to get boring after a while. But so far, it looks pretty good, although it definitely feels like it's in beta. And I'm a little nervous that they're going to have it pulled all together by the April 21st deadline. And we're less than a month away now. And the Orc fleet, only 2 different ship classes are available. That may be more of as a teaser. I don't know. But in some of the, it's pretty intuitive, but there definitely could use some tutorials, which is not available yet. But still, I like what I'm seeing a lot here. I think it'll have been worth the admission price just to play it and really see my favorite ships brought to life. And the visuals really are stunning. I mean, it definitely looks fantastic. So if you're a fan of Battlefleet Gothic, or pretty much naval combat games, you'll like this. Also, the boarding actions are cool. You can see the little boarding pods fly out there. It's really solid. I'm hoping there's good station assaults. I'm hoping there's good mission objectives. We don't see a lot of that yet. I have no idea what the campaign's going to feel like, if it's going to feel tacked on, if there's going to really be some depth there. So no clue about that. But just the basics, it's almost worth the price of admission just to see the animations in the ships come to life. So that's Battlefleet Gothic Armada, available on Steam now for early beta access, and it's going to be out April 23rd. Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which, hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show. Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class. Hey, welcome back. And as you heard earlier, of course, Jeff is on the show. And, you know, whenever we have new designers, new guests on the show, we need to ask them a few questions about how they got started in the industry before we ask them all about the brand new hotness, the brand new version of Battlestations.
Ooh.
Just successfully funded.
Yeah.
Epically so. Really kicked the heck out of that start. But before we get to all that, we should...
See what you did there.
You see that? Yeah, I worked all day on that line, by the way. Just, make notes.
Good, it shows.
So, thank you. So, Jeff, we always ask everyone this question. Are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
I am now a gamer bigger than I ever have been.
Ooh, nice.
And I love that question because there was a time in the 80s when I used to think, maybe I should kind of not advertise that I'm a gamer. Maybe I'm not going to find a woman if they know that I'm actually a geek. And it's actually the sweetest thing you could do, because if you advertise who you are, then you're going to find the for you. So right. I'm very happy to have a geek wife. She's the sponsor for her school's science fiction club.
Awesome.
So very nice.
She's plenty geek for me.
That's excellent. So that's an important bit of life advice for everyone, is you got to be who you are. So Jeff, so you have been a gamer for a long time. Then what were some of the games that really helped you discover that you were in fact a gamer?
Well, of course, I played Sorry and Monopoly and all that stuff as a kid, and you just play every game in the house because that's what you did. And I was unaware of what was going on with the Avalon Hill stuff and the SBI stuff. Mm-hmm. And then a friend of mine turned me on to Dungeons & Dragons, and the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook absolutely changed my life. It's the most life-changing document that ever came across my existence. So and then from there, I got into there's other games and was playing Risk and moving on, and then got into the gaming world proper. And so really it was D&D was my gateway into gaming. For a lot of people, and I love how you phrase the life-changing document there in the Player's Handbook. I think many gamers from our generation, that is the book that really captured their imagination, right, as they as a rite of passage into gaming. Did you ever get into so RPGs definitely in the house, classic board games in the house, and did you go down the miniature gaming path, or did you stay with the board gaming path, or did you get all the above? How did you go from there? I have done very little miniature gaming, and it's something that I always like and respect, and I feel like, it's great that those people are doing that, but I've never painted minis and had armies and been able to get into minis. I feel like it's such an investment in time and energy and money and lack of painting skill that I just never really turned the corner on it. But it's something I feel like it might be in my future. I think it sounds, looking at your Kickstarter pictures, I think it's definitely in your future. There are some minis coming through on that Kickstarter, that's for sure. Actually, I want to ask you more about that in a bit. But so how did you go from person passionate about games to thinking, hey, I want to make a career out of game design and making games? Well, it was really designing games, and first, of course, like everybody else, modifying the games that you play, making house rules and stuff, and then eventually coming up with my own stuff. And I found more and more that I had to publish them. It wasn't a case of, this would be kind of fun. It was, wow, I've got to make this game and I've got to show it to the world. And frankly, some of my early stuff wasn't all that great, but it was still, it was a drive and share that with the world. And so, and fortunately, I suppose for the gaming industry, everything else I did just didn't seem like it was right for me. So I had any kind of flunky job you can imagine, as a lifeguard, a climbing instructor, a office temp, and let's see, I worked as in a restaurant as an assistant manager. Wow! Just all kinds of different goofy things that I was working for Parks and Rec department, and nothing really felt like it's what I should be doing as much as designing games did. Wow.
Excellent.
Tried it all out.
That's right. Work the field there.
That's right.
So what kind of got you, what was sort of the first couple designs that kind of got you to the point where you felt like I could do this for a living, and how did you get your first big break?
Well, my first designs that I published were, my first that I published for real were Total War and Pantheon back in '92. And I thought that was it. Now I'm a professional game designer. And that was just the first 2 games for Gamesmiths. And we really didn't get enough of a footprint to make a go of it. And so after 3 or 4 more games, the company went belly up, and I said, I guess my life's calling is not to be a game designer. So that's when I slinked off to go work in a climbing gym. Mm-hmm. And then while I was working in the climbing gym, and I eventually finished my 4-year degree after, I think, 16 or 18 years, and started working as a substitute teacher. And then I got the idea for Battlestations and started working on that. And then Lifeboat came to me, and I didn't have a company at the time, so Fat Messiah Games published Lifeboat, and they sold out of it within a few months. But that was at the time when Wizard's Attic was a fulfillment house that went bankrupt, and everybody just stiffed everybody.
Oh no!
So the game sold out, and we got $0, and that's just kind of one of the things that happens. So, and then after I started Guerrilla Games and we published Battlestations, I was showing some friends Lifeboat, and they said, "Wow, you should publish this. This is better than Battlestations." And so I said, "All right, well," and I got professional printing and stuff, and did a nice go of Lifeboat. Now Lifeboat is in 6 or 7 languages, I think.
Nice.
So I'm very happy with that.
That's fantastic. So for those who don't know Lifeboat, can you give us kind of a quick overview of the game?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Lifeboat is the game where you're a character aboard a lifeboat adrift at sea. Each of the players has somebody with a card that says that they secretly love that player and somebody that they secretly hate. So you get points for surviving, points for your love surviving, points for your hate not surviving. And if you happen to hate yourself, you're a psychopath. Now you get points for surviving and the person you love surviving, but then you get 3 points for everybody else on the boat that dies.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been called one of the meanest games ever because you're there in a boat and you're dying of thirst and people aren't giving you water, or you fall overboard and people throw chum in after you. It's good fun.
That's excellent. That's
all
excellent.
right. That's any game that includes chum is a good game.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Chum and sharks is always a win. Great. So, and I would say, what would you say? Would you say Lifeboat and Battlestations are the game that sort of define you as a designer, really got your name out there?
Absolutely, yeah. I've got some other games. Who Would Win is a party game that got picked up by GameRight. And so that's sort of another kind of corner of my oeuvre.
Yep.
But really, Lifeboat and Battlestations are the 2 main stanchions.
Who Would Win is a fantastic game concept, and it's one we play in our house quite a bit. Love the idea.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
No, it's a great game. And I've heard of Lifeboat, never played it, but I was intrigued with Battlestations. And so can you tell everybody sort of like how the initial version and idea for, because of course Battlestations 2 now is the thing you're kickstarting, and it's a very beloved, almost classic game now, right? How would you, how did the idea of Battlestations sort of come to be?
Well, it has its roots back in being a fan of Star Trek and playing an old game, Space Quest, which was like a Dungeons and Dragons in space kind of thing. Back in the
Sierra
80s.
Online, right? Sierra Online Space Quest.
No. Space Quest. This was a 8.5 by 5.5 book. It was just a pencil and paper RPG.
Okay. I didn't know that. Nice.
This was old school. So then fast forward a few years to when I was playing, I played Space Hulk, and I said, "Oh my God, you're on a spaceship in space and fighting aliens. This is awesome." And then it turns out the ship doesn't move, so I was a little disappointed by that. And then playing Starfleet Battles, I loved that, but I didn't feel like I was on the ship. I felt like this is my ship I'm moving around instead of, oh, here I am on the helm making the ship do stuff.
Right.
And then what I think is really the pivotal moment, and me and my brother fought about this a lot, is because I've finally come around to his way of thinking on it, was that he was playing a first-person shooter game. I think it was Elite. No, not Elite. Anyway, he was playing a first-person shooter where he was on a starship, and he said, wouldn't it be great if you could fly the starship and run around on the ship and shoot people? Mm-hmm. And, because you could see a starship out the window, but it was just window dressing, literally.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so he said, let's make a video game of it. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. And then within a few months, we realized that we didn't have the millions of dollars it would take to make a video game.
Right.
And so that just kind of fell by the wayside. And pretty soon thereafter, when I made my next version of a space game, because I, meanwhile, had been making role-playing games in space and other space games with modular starships and stuff, and the next version that I made included the characters at the battle stations and moving around on the ship and that. Mm-hmm. And so that was it was me inventing this out of whole cloth. And in my brother's eye, it was me taking his video game idea and making a board game out of it. And so he was actually angry with me about it for years, and I didn't realize it because I just thought I thought it up. But I realize now that, yes, I thought it up right after I had been exposed to his version of it.
Right.
So
it snuck into your subconscious and sort of sat there and giving you ideas, right?
Yeah. So anyhow, that was the germ of it. And then from there, really the main thing is that you've got these modules, and the modules come together to form a ship, and the players move around on the modules, operating the battle stations operating the helm to turn the ship, or the engines to give more power, or the guns to shoot the enemy. And at the same time, the ship is on the hex map, mm-hmm. and so it's simultaneous ship-to-ship and boarding action. So that's really the nugget of battle stations.
So it's very cool. So you're actually you're actually playing the crew on the ship, but there's also a larger sort of a larger scale representation of the ship flying around on the board. You got to deal with what's going on out there as well. That's really awesome. Now, when did the initial battle stations first come out?
We originally released in 2004 at Origin, and for me, it was the way we got the game. The name Guerrilla Games was after my first game company cratered. I said, "Well, I'm just never going to want to deal with printers and official things ever again. So if I do another game, it's going to be totally guerrilla style. I'm going to break in the middle of the night and use photocopiers and just not actually publish anything, just slip it under people's doors." And of course, Battle Stations was so good, and I was just joking, but Battle Stations was so good that I said, no, this isn't going to be something that's photocopied. This is going to have to be pretty and have, solid components and really done right. And then I also realized I don't want to have to spell gorilla, so it's just going to be
the truth comes out.
No. Yeah. So that was how we got Battle Stations going, and then a few years after that, I said, "Oh, well, let's give a shot at Lifeboat," and that went really well. And then a few years after that, I did Who Would Win, which I had been sitting on since the early 90s because I was worried about licensing. I didn't really understand that you could use characters like Batman in your argument game as long as you didn't use images of them. You just said, okay, here's Batman. It's like a trivia game.
Right.
So, and I saw Apples to Apples had been using that stuff, and I said, oh, well, I can probably do that too, and it worked out well for me.
Great. Well, that's a fantastic story. And how did you know? What were the first inklings that you had a really great hit with? With Lifeboat, you kind of knew because it sold out instantly or very quickly.
Oh no, neither game really sold out instantly. Well, the original Lifeboat, we only had 500 units, and it sold out within the first 3 or 4 months. Okay. Uh-huh. But we were selling it for $8, and we didn't get any of the money, so it didn't feel like a hit. It just felt like it felt like somebody broke into my garage and stole all my games.
Oh, right.
It felt like a hit below the belt, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. But with Battle Stations, I had 36 units pre-ordered to a distributor that's now out of business, and that was it. None of the other distributors wanted to touch it, and it was just, oh my God, I've got 3,000 of these things. How am I going to sell them? Oh. And I went to the convention and sold a bunch there, and kept going to the other conventions, Gen Con and the local conventions. And within 6 months or so, ACD picked us up, and pretty soon thereafter, Alliance picked it. And then I was in distribution, and I feel like I might be the last tiny game company that got picked up by one of the big distributors, because they just don't want to mess with adding little game companies.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. So, so you did you do initially just one print run of Battlestations, or and so is Battlestations 2 sort of the second print run, or did you do several before you moved on to the second edition?
We did the first print run of 3,000 units in 2004, and then in 2008 we did the revised edition of Battlestations, which literally had all of the stuff on the same pages. We were careful to keep the same art and the same words on the same pages, but then the stuff that we changed so it would be on the same page for reference, but it was, the updated rules.
Got it.
Clever.
Yeah, that worked out nicely. And then each of the books, the supplements that we did the 4 major supplements were Galactic Civil War, Pax Galacticum, Pirates of Trunlia, and How Much for Your Planet. And then also some small books, Bot Wars, The Planet of Dr. Moreau, By Her Majesty's Sacred Egg Sack, and Deep Ones in Deep Space.
Love the names.
Each one of those games added more to the rules, and as the game was released in the wild, we learned more from the people that were playing it. And so one of the things that I would always say is that I would explain something, and if I had to explain it 50 times, then people would probably have the right answer. That when people would say, "Oh, so your ship's speed, that's how many hexes you go, right?" And I would always have to say, "No, that's how many hexes your ship's going to go over 6 phases based on its speed. If your speed is greater than blah, 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 blah."
Right.
But really what I should have said was, "Yes, you're right. That's how fast the ship is going." Because people will tell you what's right. That if it's in the zeitgeist of what it should be, then it comes back at you.
Well, I wanted to ask you that kind of question before we get into the details of what was in the Kickstarter. What can folks look forward to coming out from you guys? Having done all these game designs, what are some of the sort of the life lessons you've taken away from designing these various games? What are the big learnings? It sounds like one of them is trust what your people are asking you, because they're asking you the simple interpretation of your rules, and if your answer is not simple, you've made it too complicated. Is that right?
Yeah. That's a big one. That the first one I learned was you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That if you've got a game system, for instance, Battlestations, it's roll 2d6 and add your skill to go for a target number, and that is not groundbreaking. That's been around forever. I think Traveler is 1d6 plus a target number, or plus a skill against a target number. So when I originally designed Battlestations in 2000, I had this system where you roll a bunch of dice, and you'd roll extra dice based on the difficulty, and then take away a number of dice based on how many. And it was this kind of mess, but it was so much fun to fly around on starships in space that I didn't realize what a mess it was. And my buddy Robert Posada said I should go with a D20, because then I could be the open game license was really hot right then, and that would make me more compatible with that stuff. And so I ran some numbers so I could prove to him that my system was great and he was wrong. And it turned out my system was full, because I had such a tiny little area of a window of where things would matter. Because if you're rolling a lot of D6s and you're taking away a bunch of them, the numbers the variability is really small. You're only going to have 3 or 4 points of difference to play with. But then I realized also that I wanted 2d6, because the luck system where you can re-roll one of the dice is so valuable to Battlestations. So instead of going with the D20, I went with 2d6, and you can re-roll one of the dice within your profession. So it gave me, I think, just the right. This comes back around to what you were asking. Is it's a simple game, because a simple game about being on a starship and a simple game about starships flying around in space, and the way those two were woven in together is going to be plenty complex without having to say, okay, the number of actions you get is based on your quickness stat, and roll a bunch of dice and see which phase you act on based on the dice that you rolled, which literally was the original rule for Battlestations from 2001 through 2003. Oh. Yeah, and so instead, do what you're going to do, and the special stuff that you're going to do, everything doesn't have to be special. It just has to be right. And some of what you do is going to make it special. But really, if you need to be, if you want to determine a random number between 1 and 6, try picking up a die and rolling it. That's
Right.
pretty much the best thing to do.
Right.
That you don't have to, paint numbers on the backs of cockroaches and see which runs under the television last or something.
Nice. So, what mechanic are you most proud of from Battlestations?
It has to be. Well, I don't know if I can't really be proud of it because I stole it from somebody else. But the luck system is really the best thing in Battlestations. I had played 007, and they had fate points where if your secret agent was going to get whacked, you could spend a fate point to get out of the situation.
Right.
And but you could only have maybe 1 or 2 fate points to start with, and you rarely earned more. So it was really a Deus Ex Machina thing.
Right.
In Battlestations, I kind of turned that on its head and said everybody starts with about 6 luck points, and they replenish every mission. So what that means is early on in the mission, if something's going to disintegrate you and you've got to roll a 7 or better or you turn to dust, well, it would suck if you got eliminated that early in the mission. So you spend your luck to re-roll one of the dice and then spend again. So every remote possibility that you're going to get disintegrated early on. But by the end of the mission, when it's nearing its end, you might have a heroic death. And so then once you've run out of luck, it's okay.
Right. Right. You don't
So
get
really,
that's cool.
It also lets you put heroes up against an overmatched foe. So if the enemy characters are higher in rank and they have great hit points and great weapons and great abilities, and you're thinking, oh man, and their ship is bigger, they're just going to crush us. But if you've got luck and special abilities, then you feel like you're going to get crushed, but then with a couple of rolls going your way, you actually end up winning. And so the game feels tighter than it really is. It really is balanced such that the heroes are going to win more often than not. But when you're sitting there looking at, I need to roll a 10 on the dice or I turn into a pile of dust. Oh no, what am I going to do? Well, if you've got 5 rerolls, you're going to make that roll.
Right.
But then some of those 5 rerolls are gone, and now you're looking at, but by the time you have to check again, you'll have killed the enemy galaxy.
Right. That's really cool. So you have a hit on your hands. You got great mechanics. Everybody likes it. Been going along for a while. What inspired the Kickstarter? What inspired Battlestations 2?
Well, what inspired Battlestations 2 first, and then we can talk about the Kickstarter.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we did about 10 books, and over the years, the original game became more patchwork than original hull. That we were, every time we'd add something and fix something, and some of the stuff that I wanted to fix, I knew would be too fundamental. So when you go to do a second edition, you can go from the ground up and say, okay, we're throwing that out and weaving that in. Original Battlestations, psionics was an extra thing at the end of the game, just like in the Player's Handbook of D&D.
Right.
And now in second edition, all that psionic stuff it's a special ability just like anything else. It's marked as psionic. So if you're trying to play a more realistic campaign, you're not going to have somebody who's got mind control or energy deflection and that kind of stuff. But it's marked as psionic, but it uses the same rules. So it uses the same system. It wasn't really until about 4 years ago that somebody ran a very psionic character that we realized the psionics rules were totally broken. Because people would just play a little psionics and you'd say, oh, well, that's great. And when somebody said, all right, you know what, I'm going to dial it all the way up and have this guy 8 ranks of psionics, and he was just decimating enemy ships and killing everybody on board. And we said, oh, okay, well, that's a really powerful character. We got to nerf that. My Lowcasters absolutely hate me because every time they have a character that starts really kicking ass, they find them getting nerfed. But that's their job.
Nice. So you wanted to sort of do the reboot to give you the chance to kind of weave in some of the great ideas that came along later and make them a foundational part of the game. That makes sense.
Yes.
So how did the Kickstarter idea come to be? Was it just sort of that's what's happening now, so that's what you're going to do, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I had resisted Kickstarter for years because I thought, well, I don't have to go begging for money. I'm a professional, and I design games and people. And then I started to see that no, the money that I was using to print games was money I would beg and borrow from friends and family. So it wasn't like I was making a great profit and churning it all back into the business. I was just barely squeaking by. And the thing about Kickstarter is that it gives the people who want to buy the game a chance to really look at it and see if they want it. So it connects you directly to the audience. And that is awesome, because that's who I want to make the game for. I don't want to go to my parents and say, oh, hey, can I borrow $20,000 so I can make this game? I want to go to the gaming community and say, hey, do you guys want to put up so we can make this thing awesome? Right. And they come back to me and say, no, we want to give you $200,000 so you can make this thing super awesome. Right. And I said, okay, we can do that.
Which is awesome. It must have been very affirming. So how did that? So were you nervous going in? I mean, did you have a lot of confidence going into this was going to be a big deal? And what did you want to bring to the table right from the get go for the Kickstarter to make people to get people really engaged with Battlestations is back and better than ever? What were you feeling was going to make it better than ever?
Well, the first thing I did was my friend Joey Vigor was running. He had run his Chaosmos Kickstarter. He was an unheard of company, and all of a sudden came out with $140,000 on his Kickstarter. And I said, "Oh, I need to get this guy on board because he knows how to market, and he knows how to get plastic miniatures made and that stuff." So it was really instrumental and crucial to get him on my team. And then also not only that, but Joey had some great connections for getting art like Steve Hamilton to do our module art. And so the original Battlestations was done by me and my brother Jason with the best artists that we could kind of cajole into doing it for us for, a little piece of the money, and not as professional. And we couldn't do any plastic miniatures. That was just, not even believable. But we, especially Jason, used to say, a big game company like Fantasy Flight should publish this thing, and they would be able to do it right. And I would always say, no, I want to do it right. I want to do it. I want to be in charge of it, because I don't want them to make it the way they want it. It's really the biggest fan of Battlestations is me, and I want to make that game the way I want it. And so I did not want to sell out to anybody big. And I never had an offer from anybody big, so I didn't have to worry about it. So when I was talking about getting the second edition, and people used to say, oh, well, we like the 1-inch squares instead of the 7/10 of an inch squares and miniatures would fit there for 28 millimeter miniatures. And I really wanted to get 28 millimeter miniatures. And finally, one day, I vividly remember sitting at the table looking at a 28 millimeter miniature and a 15 millimeter miniature that we had from the original game and a meeple, and saying, man, I wish I could have this 28 millimeter. I really wish I could have it. But in order to do that, I would have to make the modules do more so that I could have fewer on the table, so that the game would actually fit on a table. Right. And I would also have to make the game streamlined, and I would have to make it simpler, and I would have to make it better. And then all these lights went on in my head, and I said, none of that's bad. Right. It's not like I would have to ruin the game in order to make it. If it would be right now, if you were to say to me, hey, Jeff, you could make $200,000 on Kickstarter if you just sell out your vision and instead make the game different, I would say, no, I don't want to do that. But if you were to say, hey, if you make the game different so that you can accommodate these miniatures, but in order to do that, you're going to make it a better game. And that's really what happened is it all of the other stuff, like the ships moving faster and psionics getting rolled in and tightening up the special abilities, all of that stuff made the game better, like a 1.5 or a 1.8. But then the second edition revolution was when I said, okay, you can reuse the modules over again, and that meant much more useful. So the ships were smaller, so you can get around on them faster, and everything it snowballed into a much better game.
That's really cool, and it's really kind of neat that the effort to just make it look nicer on the table actually informed a bunch of decisions that turned into a better overall gaming experience and a tighter play experience in addition to just looking fantastic. I'm looking at the pictures now in your Kickstarter and the art, the color, the models.
It's
beautiful. It just pops right off the table. It looks great. Looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'm thrilled with that, and it's one of the things that as a designer for my whole career, I have sort of sheepishly said, okay, well, here's the best art I can do. And occasionally I've had some stuff that looks really good. And by the way, the original Battlestations I am very proud of. I thought it had a fun look to it, and but you can tell that the industry standard has moved forward 12 years, and now that I'm able to really put some money out there and get professionals and make it look as good as it is, then it's a win-win.
Oh yeah. So that's fantastic. And what it looks great. How did you? So going into the Kickstarter, you kind of knew you're going to have a tighter experience. You knew you was going to look better. Were you really confident, or were you really nervous going into the early days of the Kickstarter and the launch process?
Both. I mean, I knew going in that there was a chance that other companies have done hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I said, I've been pushing this at conventions for 12 years, and there's people at every convention I go to. People say, "When's the second edition coming out?" And count me in. And I know that if with that kernel of people that were really into the game, that was going to help to get us up over the hump and get some more recognition, because it's the kind of thing that if Battlestations, as awesome as it is right now, if it didn't have the big numbers that it had on Kickstarter, then it wouldn't penetrate the consciousness the way it does. Right. And so now there's going to be people, when you go to conventions, there's going to be people who say, "Oh yeah, there's Battlestations at this convention," and it doesn't necessarily have to be me or one of my buddies running the game. That it's going to enter into the community proper.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think Kickstarter does do that. It does. When it succeeds, it also gives you a big jump on marketing, not just on your money, which is really interesting how that works. Because people tend to follow and know which Kickstarters do really well, right? And they're like, "Oh man, Battlestations did great. That must be as good as I've heard." That kind of thing. Yeah,
and it's true. I mean, I certainly do that. If somebody says, "Oh, hey, have you checked out such and such project on Kickstarter?" And then I'll say, "Oh, maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I don't know." But then if they say it has done X amount of money, then I'll say, "Oh, well, that's something that has risen in the consciousness. I should check it out."
Right.
Yeah.
And if I check it out and don't like it, yes.
Yeah. Exactly right. Any nervousness about I did want to ask you a little bit about the miniatures, because you'd mentioned earlier you didn't have a lot of experience with it, and I know you tout, one of the famous things about Battlestations is that it's a board game sort of RPG hybrid, because your storytelling and your characters are improving as you go. Now it's a board game RPG miniature game hybrid. I mean, did you what kind of worries did you have adding the miniatures to the thing beyond some of the mechanics you had to change?
Well, the miniature in terms of the gameplay, the miniatures really could be just meeples. So there's not. I don't feel like it's a miniatures game as much as there's miniatures in it that make it look cooler. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I was worried about was getting these miniatures made. That I've heard horror shows saying, "Oh well, the miniatures are going to come in 17 different parts that some poor child in China has to glue together, and they're going to charge you $3 a miniature." And I said, "Oh my God, I've got 45 miniatures in my game. It's going to be, it's going to cost me $200 a game to put it together." But I got some good quotes, and I felt like with the stretch goals were great, because it was a way to say legitimately, okay, if we've got more money coming in, we can make this game look better.
Right.
And so, and I built, I think, enough of a pad into it that there's going to be, the miniatures aren't going to choke us, because I know everybody knows the horror story about Steve Jackson Games and Ogre, and they had a $20,000 project that snowballed to $1 million, and in the process ended up they ended up losing money on it because they kept adding more and more stuff that made the thing heavier. And so I was careful not to do that. But at the same time, you want to dial up the value for the end user.
Right.
And so I don't want to just say, okay, well, my stretch goal is if I get $100,000, then I'm going to pay my mortgage.
Right.
And then 50, I'm going to buy a boat. It's.
You don't think that would generate a lot of enthusiasm?
I don't think so.
Right.
And I will give you a picture of myself on the boat.
Right. Look.
Yeah.
So what were some of the big? It sounds like you did a lot of research going into this. Reached out to some people who'd had successful Kickstarters, understood some of the pitfalls other Kickstarters had. What were some of the biggest lessons learned? I love to ask folks who've done Kickstarters, especially successful ones, after their Kickstarters ended and yours just wrapped up here. And you did fantastic. You almost made almost $250,000. Fantastic results. What were some of the lessons learned during the Kickstarting process? Actually, during the time the Kickstarter was running, what were some of the big things you took away from that?
Two things. One, at the micro level, connection with the backers. Mm-hmm. That I made it a point to message each one of the backers and just say thanks and connect with them. And if they had some goofy picture in their avatar, then I would comment on that. But I just wanted to somehow say, hey, each one of those backers is actually a part of the project, and I actually wouldn't be talking to you now if I didn't have those backers actually backing me. So it was super important for that, and that also gave me a connection with them, so that when they had questions and comments, I felt like we're having a conversation, and it's not just, oh, this is some nameless company that's throwing nonsense out at us and they won't answer our questions. So that was really important, and that was something I felt comfortable with. And then the other end of that was that really to do a great successful Kickstarter, you need to have somebody doing the art and doing the updates and the videos. Constant videos. Joey was always saying, let's film more videos. Let's get more videos of us, talking about the game, and more videos, this and that. So being involved and taking it like a full-time job. So, all the Kickstarters that I had done before this didn't add up to half as much, didn't add up to a quarter as much. And, it's put together, they didn't. And it's because I would make a game, make a video. Usually I'd put my kids in the video because my kids are adorable. And I also think that people have a tendency to relate more, and like the way if you're ever taken hostage, you try to humanize yourself to your captors. Right. So I'd say, oh, look, this guy's got kids. We should help him out. So the videos were nice. And then I would say, okay, here's my project. And then people would back it, and it would be fine. But it never went crazy because I wasn't taking it seriously as a Kickstarter. I was taking the game seriously, right. And the games I would produce, I'm extremely proud of all of those. But I wasn't really strategy of, look, here's where we are, here's where we can go, here's the extra cool stuff. And obviously, of course, miniatures is the simplest eye candy to be able to say, hey, here's something even cooler.
Right. And they definitely work. People like to bling out their games, so getting that in there is really a big part of it, I think.
It's all about accessories.
But also, I think it's also a big deal especially when you're doing sort of a game that tells a story. I think the visual appeal is really it's really part of the experience, right? And so I think that's something that I think a lot of people kind of will often say, well, I don't mind playing a game with very simple components, and that's true. I mean, there's value in that too. But when you got a game at this level with this kind of storytelling happening, the visual, the more visual the pieces are, the more your imagination's even fired up. That now you know what that giant robot looks like, or now you know what that alien looks like, right?
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the aliens, one of the things I've always prided myself on is how alien my aliens are, right. Which has driven every one of my art directors and artists and anybody working on the Kickstarter or anything. They just get into fits because what people are used to is, oh, here comes the strange, crazy alien. It's a guy with a different thing on his forehead, right. or maybe he has 2 extra arms. Right. And but none of my aliens look like a person in a suit with an extra arm suit. My aliens are a big pile of spaghetti or a pile of rocks or a 3-dimensional jack or a fungus thing, and I love it because it means that they're different and special. Mm-hmm. But it's also really hard for the artist. I say, okay, let's have a picture of this tumbleweed thing having a firefight in the hallway with this rock thing. And the artist says, what I didn't realize until I started doing this is that when you have a firefight in the hallway, the shot of somebody getting hit in the gut and he's grabbing his gut and the look on his face as he gets hit, that's the emotional, interesting thing. But if you've got a pile of rocks or a pile of spaghetti, you can't really tell how much it bothers them to get shot in the gut, and do they even have a gut?
Right. Right. So does the artist say, well, so what does pain look like on a pile of rocks?
Right. And they would always be throwing eyes on them and faces and stuff. And I would say, I don't want faces and I don't want eyes. And Joey, who was helping me with the Kickstarter, would say, we need more aliens that people can relate to. And then actually, after we got underway with the stretch goals, and we started to get an idea of where we were going, I said, well, there are the humanoid aliens from the planet of Dr. Moreau, which I've got a little side note about that. But anyway, they're beastmen creatures, and so they'll look more standard. And here's the side story on that is that I have never liked alienoid, furry science fiction. I always thought, no, that doesn't make sense. You wouldn't have animal people. And if you went halfway across the galaxy, you'd find big piles of fungus or something. You wouldn't find a guy that looks like a cat. So I was opposed to that. And then when I was originally publishing Battlestations in 2004, my last playtest, this friend of mine, Jonah Johnson, was sending me weekly updates with great mission reports. And then all of a sudden he went quiet for a week. And I called him and said, hey, what's up? And he said, well, one of my playtesters died. I said, oh, man, and that just takes it to a whole different level when you're thinking, oh, I wonder if people are going to like my game. And you think, oh, this is a guy who just lost a friend. Right. And so I said, well, is there anything we can do? I was thinking, name a planet after her or something. And he said, well, she was always disappointed that there weren't cat people in the game. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I've taken a stand against cat people. So so here I am. I've got to do it. And so then what I came up with, and also my family name, one of my grandfathers, his middle name was Moreau, and so the island of Dr. Moreau has always been sort of interesting to me in that regard. And I said, oh, the planet of Dr. Moreau. So I concocted this idea that you would have cat people in space if there were people out there doing experiments on people and cats, creating cat people.
Right.
So you're not going to go halfway across the galaxy to find cat people, but you're going to bring people halfway across the galaxy and turn them into cats.
Turn them into cats, which is awesome. Yeah, I'm looking down here. You got the elephant people. You got crocodile people. Oh, that's great. It's got a whole...
What? Go down to the bottom of the page and look at the whaleoid.
I know, right? It's awesome. This stuff is great. So that's fantastic. I love that story. And as a fan of old school video games, including Wing Commander, I like that there's a Kilrathi-like creature in your game. So I'm okay with that, even though it does. I agree also with your scientific analysis that it doesn't make a lot of sense. But
yeah,
sometimes sci-fi doesn't always have to make sense, though. We can agree on that. So you got all. So you're in a great spot now. You had a great Kickstarter, great results. Now you just got to deliver on this thing, right? So
yes.
So how are things going? How are you feeling right now?
Really, really great. The thing that I'm still nervous about is the miniatures, because I've had assurances, and I actually have printed some out on 3D printers, and so I know they're possible. But until I actually have the whole box sealed up with plastic in it, I'm not going to say, "Woohoo, we're done!"
Right?
Let's go. But I'm really happy about the way the rule book is going, because really the rule book has been mostly done for a year, with just getting minor tweaks and polishes here and there. And now that I have the money to pay the layout guy and the artist, that's all stuff that I believe in. That's a technology that's very tried and true, is having somebody who does a great job with layout lay something out, and somebody who's a good artist do art for it. That I feel comfortable with.
Great. So
I am so stoked to actually be able to make the game, and it's very humbling to say, okay, that now, really, if you were to say to me, what do you want to do? If I would have had the option, the Wish Fairy would have come down and said, do you want to win the lottery for $1 million, or do you want to make your game? I would say 100 times out of 100, I want to make my game, because it's so important to me that that's who I am. And I've actually avoided playing the lottery, because if I accidentally won, then I'd be the guy who won the lottery instead of the guy who makes that great game.
That's awesome. Well, that's fantastic, Jeff. So if people are hearing this now, obviously the Kickstarter's over. They're excited to get involved. Can they?
No, the heck with those people. They weren't there when I needed them. They could just go. No.
There you go. A bold statement.
No. If I had applied that logic originally, then I only would have sold the original 36 units of Battlestations and never followed up on it.
Right.
One of the things we did was we didn't have any Kickstarter exclusives other than a price break, a discount during the campaign. So literally anybody who gets in afterwards with the pledge manager or buys it later in retail, they're going to get everything that you get in the Kickstarter. So there's, I didn't get that cool special thing. Awesome. If you want the special thing, it's in there.
Great. And when are you looking at delivery right now? Is it early 2017, later this year?
That is our plan. That's what we've scheduled. But I'm really hoping to beat that. I'm racing against the clock to beat that, because I want to see it sooner, and I want to be able to deliver it sooner and have it out there. And I really don't have any. I'm not going to rush anything, but I don't want to drag it out until 2017.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us here and talking us all about Battlestations. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from Total Fangirl in Hollywood, and we'll be back to chat more with Jeff in a little bit.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy, and Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. This weekend, we went to see a movie. And it was the kind of movie that we have to see because being a nerdy family, we always hit superhero movies. That movie was Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. Now, I'm not going to put any spoilers in here, so if you haven't seen it, nothing's going to be ruined. I mean, you guys pretty much all know right from the title, Batman and Superman, they get mad, they fight each other. That's the gist of things. And this movie is getting roundly panned by critics, and I had extremely low expectations when I walked in. Partly because Ben Affleck was in his little movie a ways back. Remember that when he was a superhero? Remember when he tried to be Daredevil? Remember how that worked out? Yeah, so I was a little bit nervous about that. To be fair, he's a pretty decent Batman in this movie. He does a good job. I didn't hate him, and I was really thinking I was going to hate him. I actually liked the guy and truly feel a little bad the movie's getting so panned because he does a good job with Batman. He does a good job with what he's been given. What I didn't like about the movie, and again, these aren't spoilers, but what I didn't like is it's so darn bleak. I guess it has to be bleak a little bit because you've got two essentially superheroes. I mean, I guess you could call Batman not really a superhero, but, heroic guys in tights fighting each other instead of working together to save the world from the latest disaster or aliens or criminal mastermind. It's really dark. It's so dark that I found myself watching it and thinking, why did I spend my money on this just to be depressed for 2 hours? Over 2 hours? It was just incredibly depressing. And it's not that I minded seeing bad things happen, but there's no joy to this movie. There's no fun. There's nothing happy about it. There's all the fun of superheroes, all the fun of this kind of stuff where you can sort of say, I'm going to be anything but the grown-up that's responsible with kids and a house and a job. I'm going to be a 12-year-old kid for a little while. I'm going to watch a movie about superheroes and believe in the whole thing and the entire world that's created, and I'm going to have fun with it. you can't have fun with this movie. You can believe in the superheroes all you want, but it's not fun. I think there were 2 lines that I could really count on that were truly quirky and funny. One has played tons in the previews, so you guys all know it, so it loses some of its impact when you think, oh yeah, here's where they say that cute line. And the other one was uttered once by one other character, and I won't say it or who, because maybe you want to be surprised. And it was worth a smile and a chuckle. And that moment when that character does that, when this character says something that actually made me laugh inside for a second, I thought, that's what I don't like about this. There's nothing in this that's fun. There's nothing in this that's enjoyable. There's nothing in it that captures the reasons why you sort of fall in love with superheroes to begin with. We might become adults and start to feel like there's bigger overarching themes of good and evil and that you need to see in movies like this, but sometimes you just want them to be a little bit fun. There's nothing fun on this. So it was a bad movie for me because it wasn't enjoyable. It was so dark. It was so bleak. It was so the world is horrible and awful and why do we all live here that I couldn't enjoy it. I don't want to be just going to a movie to have superheroes make me depressed for an hour. I want to go to a movie where superheroes make me feel like there's some hope in the world and things could be a better place. And in the end, Batman versus Superman just made me feel like the world is such a sad, sorry little place and there's no hope for any of us.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, we're starting to talk about Adepticon a lot. And of course, this whole episode, we'll be chatting about Adepticon off and on. And of course, we just went to Adepticon and or are about to go to Adepticon, depending on where you are on the time-space continuum. And of course, talking about Adepticon reminds us of Geek Nation Tours and Gen Con.
It does, because our friends at Geek Nation Tours get you touring to all your favorite con venues. And really, as excited as you are about Adepticon, that ship, as they say, has sailed, because by the time you hear this, Adepticon will be the same week. So instead, you should be looking at the next great tour in America, and that, of course, is Geek Nation Tours Gen Con Adventure.
Yeah, they still have some spots available, but they're going fast.
They do. And the best way to check this out, go to geeknationtours.com. Click on the Tours button. Then scroll down until you see the Gen Con 2016. It looks kind of like the old Player's Handbook cover. Actually, very cool.
It is. It's a very cool
Very cool
logo.
Indeed. Jump on in there and learn all about the excitement that is the Geek Nation Tours Gen Con experience, if you will. You get gaming at Gen Con beyond the con.
That's right.
You start
that's meta right there.
It is very meta. Even before the convention starts, you're gaming with Kentucky Fried Gamers.
That's right.
Right there, doing some crazy ventures there. Then, of course, you're going to kick the entire thing off with us as well as other folks at the big Geek Nation Tours dinner. We're very excited for that. And then you jump on into just an amazing experience. And their whole
we're actually going to be doing Dungeons and Dragons.
We are
session. We're going to be leading sessions.
Yes, and there's an entire dungeon crawling theme / experience going on here, from Frostgrave to Dungeon Saga, you name it. Geek Nation Tours has it going on for Gen Con. So check it all out.
Great with themes.
Exactly right. Head on over to geeknationtours.com.
Woo!
I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger, and this is the Hollywood Minute.
Hey there. Welcome to the Hollywood Minute with your host, Rafe Granger. All right, let's jump right down into it. So, finally got a chance to play some miniature games again. Yay, mini games. Andy and I broke out the old Flames of War. We played out of the Market Garden book, and we just played a little 500 level skirmish to get us reintroduced to the rules. And we did a good job, I think, remembering the rules. It was funny. It took us, I think, 2.5 hours to play just 500 points. Although while playing it, it didn't seem like it. I didn't get that sense of, we just keep looking in the rule book. So I'm looking forward to playing again pretty soon. My Tuesday nights are kind of getting eaten up with different activities, so I don't know. I won't be able to play a miniature game for maybe a couple of weeks. But definitely when I do, I'm going to play Andy in Flames of War. Also want to play Wakelin in some War Machine. I'm looking forward to busting that out, and haven't done that in a long time as well. Let's see, the other two fascinations of late has been my Xbox One and my Doghouse PC system. Still playing on my Doghouse, the best investment I've ever made. Let's start with the Xbox One. Playing Tom Clancy's The Division. My first time playing a shooter MMO. I really like it. I really enjoy it. I'm going to give you a high-arching overview because it might even be possible that you hear a more detailed analysis of this if Russ and I do a segment on it on the next time I appear on the show, which is coming up. So let's see, The Division. It's a shooter. Some people, Russ will say, he feels like his feet is stapled to the floor, and a lot of people have that critique of the Tom Clancy games. That's one of the pluses for me. I like the fact that it's a little bit slower of a shooter, and I also I like that slower pace. I'm really into the storyline. Is very cool. I like the equipment that you can get. I like the backpacks that you can get and upgrade. So your armor is basically like your clothes and your backpack. I've realized that a staple for me is it has to have a nice cosmetic system in an MMO, so I've been enjoying that. And overall, I recommend it. If you haven't purchased it, I would recommend you get it. It's a good purchase. It's easy to play. It's intuitive. I'm finding the storylines to be fun, and all in all, I like it. And haven't played in about a week. I'm looking forward to jumping on and playing some more with Andy. Let's see. After that, a friend of mine, Ryan, who I play D&D with, he plays our cleric in D&D. He recommended Black Desert Online. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details of it because there might be a segment on it, maybe. If not, I'll cover it in maybe a Hollywood Minute. But at first I told him no because I knew I was playing The Division, and I just didn't. I was really itching for a new MMO, though, just the right kind of MMO experience. And in a nutshell, I think BDO, Black Desert Online, has it. Definitely, it's new. I can't explain it. Well, I can. I can go through. There's about 12 to 15 things that make it new. But in the meantime, if you want to just read some reviews on it, you can. But I'm liking it. It's scratching my MMO itch. It's deep enough to play. It's very deep, actually. If I didn't have Ryan to call on the phone and say, wait a minute, how do you do this? I probably would have washed out. So if you guys have a friend that's already playing it, that's key. Or if you like learning all the tutorials on YouTube and reading and stuff, that would be key too. But again, brief overview. It's in a fantasy setting. They are doing some different things. It's a successful Korean MMO that just launched with the United States version just a couple months ago. I do recommend it. It's got a very low entry price of $30, which lets you buy the game, and then from there you can purchase. It makes its money from sales in game, extra slots, wardrobe, costumes, better mounts, stuff like that. I did buy the $60 version, which gave me some dyes to dye clothing, a pet, a flute to call my horse, and I found that to be a good value as well. So pretty much that's it. It's Easter Sunday. I'm recording this before heading over to brunch. I wanted to get this in the can for Wakelin. And until next time, happy gaming. This is Rafe Granger, signing out.
Hey guys, so we're back, and everybody will remember way back, Gen Con 2015, seems like an eternity ago. One of the big deals was the Kickstarter, the first big Kickstarted project by Stronghold Games, Space Cadets Away Missions, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Really super cool. We had, anyway, we talked about it. We talked it up. We had everybody on. It was great. And we finally got it to play it.
Yes.
Right? And it was awesome, except that Russ, what was the one big selling point for you for this game?
So yeah, I did back the Kickstarter. I was very excited because I found that you know how Cody Jones from the Game On with Cody and John podcast, he had the Jones theory, right? Which is you should only have one of each type of game.
Yes.
So I found that I like dungeon crawls, and I've discovered this about myself. I want to collect them all.
Yes.
It's like a thing for me. I like all the dungeon crawl games.
It's kind of like Pokemon.
It is. So when I heard there was going to be a dungeon crawling game set in the golden age of sci-fi, I was like, I must
and we
own
had
this.
Steven on, and he talked it up, and that got y'all jazzed.
So I backed the Kickstarter. Now, what I was really excited about is that, and I saw these at Gen Con, is there's actually my favorite model in the game, because there's all these plastic bits, and we'll talk about more of those in a second. There is a brain in a jar.
Yes,
and it's a little plastic,
many brains.
Yeah,
in
and there's
jars.
a little tiny plastic brain inside of a little clear plastic jar. So it's clearly a brain. It's an awesome model. And my copy, sadly, when it arrived, had no brains in the jars.
But we didn't know that.
No. But Steven has already corrected that. He's mailed them out to me, so I'll be getting them shortly. Because Stronghold Games.
Next time we play, there will be brains in jars.
There will be brains in jars. Yes.
Because how do you do 1950s golden age of sci-fi without brains in jars?
You need brains in jars. That's just a thing.
Yeah. Quite clearly.
So let's talk about this game because we finally got it to the table and it was a lot of fun. So as Craig mentioned, it's a Kickstarter from 2015. It is now available on store shelves pretty much everywhere from our friends at Stronghold Games. Now, even though it is a Space Cadets branded product, this game is not designed by the Inglestein clan.
No, indeed.
This is actually by Dan and Al over at Stronghold. These are so it's in their same license, but it's a entirely different game than the other Space Cadets products.
Yes.
And basically that's because it is a 1 to 6 player co-op dungeon crawl game set, as I said earlier, in the golden age of 1930s, 1950s sci-fi, right?
Yes.
And the suggested retail price for this bad boy is $99.95.
Mm-hmm.
On the Kickstarter, I backed the Kickstarter for $99, and so not only did I save 95 cents, but also I received the highly collectible and oft-sought-after hardcover mission book with extra missions in it that were only available to Kickstarter backers. So that's cool. So I got more options, which is kind of nice. Now, the game length is listed on the back of the box between 60 and 120 minutes. That is probably optimistic for first-time players. It's definitely optimistic for 6 players. It's probably really thinking about 4 or less players at that time slice. So, Craig, would you like to give us a dramatic reading? Or, Jeff, how good are you at dramatic readings?
I love dramatic readings.
All right,
excellent.
Excellent, Jeff. Could you give us a dramatic reading
to the mic.
of the theme here in italics?
All right, here we go. Long before the threat of the Nemesis, before the perils of warp drive or the founding of our own space academy, humanity experienced a golden age of space exploration. The mineral riches of the thriving moon colony inspired legions of hardy Earth citizens to seek their fortune in space. Humble rockets probe the farthest reaches of the solar system in an eager quest for resources, and brave colonists forged homes wherever they could survive. Pioneer life was hard, but the men and women who worked and raised their families on those planets and asteroids had much to be proud of. Then the rumors began. Whispered tales of frontier abductions and sightings of mysterious creatures. By the time the secret invasion was exposed, the aliens were everywhere. Families had been stolen away by slavers from the stars, and the peace-loving survivors had no choice but to arm themselves and fight. Fight to stop the alien attacks. Fight to free the helpless abductees. Fight to throw the aggressors back into space and forever their power to threaten humanity. Thus was born the Rocket Patrol, an organization of brave and hardy women and men dedicated to defending humanity and taking the fight to the alien menace from the stars.
Nice. Well done, Jeff. Very dramatic indeed. And that is, of course, the theme of Space Cadets Away missions, blasting aliens with the brave members of the Rocket Patrol. So, what comes in the box? Craig, when you open up a box full of Space Cadets, what does it sound like?
Oh, well, it's got to sound like this. It goes... Beady, 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 beady.
Very good. And it does indeed come. The first thing you're going to notice is all the models, 102 plastic miniatures.
That is a lot of models.
About 28 millimeters here. And they are indeed in that golden age, sort of very very Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon-esque style of wardrobe, and with the big dome helmets on the Rocketeers and all that, and all the crazy bug-eyed bald aliens. Good stuff. My favorites are the brain in jars, but there's lots of other stuff in there too. Lots of bugs as well, little insects or beetles that attack you, as well as leeches. You definitely have the feeling. And also a big thing is the thralls. These are humans that have now had various attachments stuck to their body that are now under the control of the aliens, but could possibly be rescued.
Yes.
So lots of cool models you're going to look at in there. Plus, you're going to get some rule books. You get a nice big full-color floppy rules booklet there, and you also get a scenario booklet separated as well, not unlike many of the other Dungeon Crawl games. You get, now this is a full co-op though, there's no overlord here, so you can go ahead and read the scenario booklet as well, because everybody's going to have full knowledge of how that book works. You also get lots of cardboard. The most notable stuff in there is the 33 or more, I think it's closer to like 50, tiles. So there's all these hexagon tiles that can be arranged in different manners to form the various game boards. So the game boards are actually a collection of tiles that are all moved together, that are assembled to form various shapes, generally representing a spacecraft of some kind that you're boarding. Also, tons of tokens to track what's going on there, and lots of cards as well, along with lots of cool 10-sided dice, as well as a bunch of cubes, also plastic cubes that are nice bright colors to represent hit points are red cubes. Your oxygen is blue cubes, which are also another important resource. And then you got a bunch of green cubes, which are used to measure energy charges on various, limited use items in the game.
Yeah.
Craig, what did you think about, for $99, what do you think about the value you're getting with all the models and everything in the box?
The models are great. I love the Rocketeers. They each look individual. Russ did a great job painting just a little bit of their color around the edge. I think they come with the rings, right?
They do. So my set was missing,
color-coded.
Yeah, my set was missing two things just due to a packing error. One was the brains and jars, and one was there's supposed to be little snap-on discs.
Yeah.
That snap onto the Rocketeers in different colors.
And give them the colors. Exactly.
Right. So without any painting at all, you can spot your Rocketeer easily.
Exactly. And that would be perfect. So that's going to be perfect right out of the box. Although they do scream to be painted. I will admit that.
And Steven had a fully painted set at Gen Con that I got to play with, and they do look amazing with a little bit of effort.
I mean, they're really, really cool. And there's a lot of different kinds of creatures also. So you're going to find lots of different saucer men and their leaders, and then you're going to find these giant sentinels and the little bugs, and I love the way the bugs come out and everything.
That's my alarm sounding, because I have to say that I saw this game and it's threatening to me, because it's $99 for all this stuff in a box, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's something to measure up to when I put out Battlestations.
Now have you seen, Jeff? Did you see the game up close at Gen Con or any of the other events?
No, but I did see. I went online when you guys told me we were going to be talking about it, and watched a playthrough, and they had some painted minis, and it just looked gorgeous. It looks like a lot of fun. In a simple, you throw the dice and blow up aliens. Now,
as a game designer and publisher yourself, do you feel like they packed a lot of value into this box for $99 for what you see it on there?
Oh yeah, I mean, just looking at the components here, it really. I'm just half joking when I say I'm threatened by it. I'm hoping that. I also looked at the Imperial Assault too. Was another thing to look at. Because my game also is $99.95, and so I'm thinking, okay, that's sort of the ballpark I want to be in. What kind of stuff comes in a box? And wow, it's a lot of stuff, and it looks like they did a really good job with it all. It looks like it's not. They didn't just throw in 150 cubes just to throw in 150 cubes. They've got some really interesting pieces and useful cardstock play aids and stuff.
Yeah, I think everything in there adds to the game's feeling and ambiance. Like, Craig, I really found that the translucent cubes with the different colors actually made it feel more oxygen. It added pieces. It added atmosphere. Yeah.
It felt like you were getting something solid when you flipped up a card that had like multiple charges, so you actually got these little cool little cubes on it, or your oxygen. I think the color choices were great. I think the fact that they're translucent made them look really cool. I thought the quality of all the card stock. The only thing that I thought was a little bit too thin was the actual Rocketeers kind of like control panel.
The player mats, yeah.
The player mats. Yeah. Those are a little thin. Which is odd because everything else seems to be a really, really nice, high quality card stock. So that was really the only thing component wise that looked even a little bit iffy to me. Yep. And that's a minor consideration when you factor in how much stuff is packed into that giant box.
Yeah, even the D10s. I remember when we first rolled them, you were like, "Ooh," because they're all sparkling.
Oh, they're all
Sci-Fi
clear and sparkly and colored.
Right. So they didn't really spare any expense, and the player mats are thin, but they're also pretty large, and so I think they went for size more than thickness, which whatever. That's the decision they made. But I agree. I think there's a good value in here just for the models alone. They're dangerously close to like Cool Mini or not, miniature packing in here for the value. So I thought that was pretty impressive. So, okay. So how do we set this game up and how do we play? Well, setup is pretty similar to other dungeon crawling games. What you really want is you got to go to the scenario book and pick your starting scenario. There's a very simple intro scenario to get you down with the basics. And from there, you can pick whatever you like. The scenarios tell you what kind of layout for the tiles. And what you're going to do is you're going to want to divide your tiles into two sections. There's a set of tiles that have no words on them. And these are sort of the generic tiles. And you're going to initially lay out your map with those all face down, shuffle them up randomly and put them face down. But then there's another set of tiles that all have words on them, and these are sort of special rooms that will materialize themselves as the scenario describes.
Yeah.
Now, also after you lay down your tiles, you need to put one discovery token on each tile and one alien token on each tile. And the tiles are face down, so what that's showing you is that most of the space station, it's typically a space station you're going to be invading. And generally the theme of the game really is the Rocketeers have been called because there's an orbital platform orbiting Earth we've lost signal to and been taken over by aliens. Go see what's going on. So you're going to go board the platform. But you don't know what's in there or any of the rooms are like. So you dock with the platform. All the tiles are unknown. You put a token on each one, which is going to tell you the kind of aliens, but you don't look at the token. So you're going to shuffle all your alien tokens up. One side of them tells you the aliens that are there. The other side just says aliens on the back. So you put all that out. So there's already replayability. You don't know which aliens are where in the rooms.
Yeah.
Secondly, you've shuffled up the tiles and laid them out, so you don't know which tiles are where, meaning even though all the tiles are generic, some of them have vents, some of them don't. That affects where the bugs come from. Some of them have doors on certain sides, some of them don't. That's going to affect the pathways you can choose, and your line of sight options are different every time. And you're going to put these discovery tokens, shuffle them up, put them face down on these also. These are going to be the cool things your Rocketeers can find and other equipment you can use. Kind of gives you the feeling of leveling up as you go. Again, that's random as well. So even though these maps are, each scenario's got a fixed number of maps and fixed locations of certain special rooms, getting there from point A to point B is different every time, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So after you've got your map laid out and all the alien tokens and discovery tokens on it, now you're going to ready your Rocketeers. So each player is going to choose a Rocketeer tile. And these mats, there's a lot of fluff on these, right, Craig? So one side's got all your data on your Rocketeer. It's got a nice, great sort of color art drawing of the Rocketeer. It's got their name. It's got their rank. And then it's got some basic stats, their the kind of actions they can take.
Yep.
So watch carefully here. There's two, not all Rocketeers are equal. So
no,
every Rocketeer has 3 actions they can take, but some Rocketeers can take 2 generic actions, but then one action might be only a non-combat action. So the medical officer typically can take 2 actions and a non-combat. Well, meanwhile, the security officer can take 2 actions plus only a combat action, right? So the third action, so some of that's going on. And then also, each character also has a special overkill ability, and more about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Also, each character has a different number of starting hit points and maximum hit points. So some characters are tougher than each other out of the box as well. And what's a lot of fun is on the back of each of these cards is a nice big fluff piece that's very tongue-in-cheek 1930s sci-fi, which describes the character, their background, and why they're here in the Rocket Patrol, right?
Right.
Which is very cool.
We should just say Golden Age because you keep fluctuating between the 30s and the 50s. It's getting very confusing.
All right, Golden Age.
Golden Age of sci-fi, which, of course, people argue anywhere between the 30s and the 50s.
Very good.
Right.
Russ is completely correct, actually, by fluctuating between the 30s and the 50s.
All right. So what you're going to do is pick your Rocketeer. Then you're going to want to put your cubes on the Rocketeer. So the Rocketeers start with the number of red cubes equal to their hit points on there. It's right on their sheet. You can't mess that up.
Yep.
The starting oxygen you get is interesting. It's based on the number of players in the game. So
yeah, this was odd to me, just a little odd.
So what happens is that the fewer players there are, the more oxygen you can start the game with. And oxygen sort of serves 2 purposes. One, if any player runs out of hit points, they're dead, and your whole team loses. So no one can die. There's no player elimination. Everybody's got to stay alive to the end. But also, if any player runs out of oxygen, he dies, and everybody else loses as well. So you can't run out of oxygen, and you can't run out of hit points.
Yeah, it's weird to me because the oxygen serves 2 different purposes, right? Mm-hmm. It's extra actions when you get in a corner, but it's also this resource you have to husband or everybody loses. So it's a little bit weird that you lose a lot by playing a larger player count game. But you need to look at all your equipment options because oxygen tanks are huge. And once you get one or two oxygen tanks, you're good to go.
It's thematic because if 4 of you are going to go on a rescue versus 5 or 3, there's going to be more air that you store up on your way over.
That's true.
If we pack too many of us in a, all in one little vehicle, we'll
there you go. I hadn't even thought about that, but there you go. There's more space on the shuttle for the little extra tanks too.
I think it's a little bit of a game balance thing. So
that's the point.
Right.
But that's not the fun way to describe.
Right. So the deal is that, as Craig described, one of the things you can do with oxygen is take an extra action. So when there's more players, there's less oxygen, so less extra actions, which makes sense. But also, there are events in the game. One of the things that a lot of the aliens can do is cause panic. So when you panic, you don't take a wound, but you breathe harder and use more oxygen. So whenever a panic event occurs, players lose oxygen. And so in a lower player count game, you've really got to watch the panic, and you don't get as many extra actions. So if you get panicked, you're even losing more actions because now you're down to 1 oxygen. Because in a 6-player game, players start with only 2 oxygen cubes. So if you use that extra action, it's really risky because you might die. But as Craig described, there are ways to create oxygen in the game through gear and stuff. So it is a replenishable resource. All right. So that's setup. Setup's really pretty easy. Pick your scenario, lay out the board, put the counters on it, pick your Rocketeers, fill up their thing. Now, one more thing you get to do, and this is probably the longest part of setup, is that each Rocketeer player, there is a massive deck of Rocketeer cards. And this is all the equipment your Rocketeer can choose to start with. Now, in this deck of cards, there are all kinds of gizmos from laser guns to various forms of... There's blaster pistols, there's flamethrowers, all kinds of crazy stuff. There's oxygen tanks, there's communications arrays, there's headsets. All these different things have effects. Some of them are only usable by certain characters, so watch for that. Also, whatever you do, always take a weapon. This is mostly a game about killing aliens, so make sure you take a weapon. Yeah. And the other restriction is you cannot have more than 2 large items. So some of the items will say large on them. You can't have more than 2 large items. And you get 4 things. You can start the game with 4 things. Also, read the mission, understand the mission, because some of the missions we had to collect alien blood samples, and there's something called an air knife that is really the primary way to collect blood samples. So if you don't take any of those, you can't complete the mission, for example. Right. So be sure you read the mission and kind of equip your guys accordingly. But, of course, if you play with the easier missions first, all that stuff's baked in. Those missions get simpler. And they recommend starting gear.
It's key to learn the game before you really jump into a major time commitment session, because you need to know the mechanics. You need to know what you need to complete the mission, as Russ said. And if you're rushing into a big session right off the bat and you've never played the game before, you're going to either make some mistakes, or you're going to have to kind of fudge it later on in the game, or just work at a massive deficit later on when you need something that you don't have. Although a lot of the pickup items along the way will do similar things as well. So there's that balance. But at the same time, you want to have a guy that's like as equipped out as you can when you have that option. And you're not really going to know what you need or what you can use or how it's going to interact with the game mechanics until you've played a little. I would always recommend, having done it now, a short session to at least learn the way the game, even just one turn, to learn the way the game works, so then you can understand the equipment when you choose it.
Right. So, Jeff, does setup make sense?
Oh, yeah. Sounds good. One of the things I like about asymmetrical character powers in a co-op game is that it needs to be somewhat balanced, because you don't want to have one guy be the superstar, but it doesn't need to be perfectly balanced. So, if one character is a little better at some stuff than another, it's not going to break the game.
Yeah. I think this game probably deals with that better than any of these co-op games that I've played, I would think, because of when we talk about Overkill.
When we talk about the mechanics, we'll give some examples of the asymmetry of the characters, too. So let's talk about how the game plays. So you've got everything set up. Now, according to the scenario, there's always one tile that starts revealed. Sometimes it's part of the station, and you just put your characters there. Sometimes it's kind of cool. There's an extra tile in the game called the boarding shuttle, and sometimes all your characters start on the boarding shuttle, and the first player gets to choose where the boarding shuttle is going to dock. So you actually, without flipping anything over, you kind of got to pick where we're going to land on the station and come in from. So, in any case, how the game basically works is there's 3 big sort of turns. There's the Rocketeers' turn, there's the Aliens' turn, and then there's the cleanup phase, right? And then we go back and repeat. So what's going to happen in the Rocketeers' turn is all the Rocketeers are going to go, but there's going to be discovery for each person as well. So when the very first thing that happens is there's a pile of these little tokens called the order tokens, And there's actually a spot on each player's sheet to put this order token. And what you're going to do is these order tokens are numbered from 1 to 6. So in a 3-player game, you'd have tokens from 1 to 3. And you're going to determine what order the players are going to activate in first, second, and third. But you don't have to determine that all right now. You just pick who's going to go first. So if Craig's going to go first, he would take the order number 1 token. He'd put it on his character sheet, and there's a spot that says scan. And that's to remind you that the very first thing you have to do as a Rocketeer is actually scan one of the tiles that's nearest to your Rocketeer that hasn't been scanned yet. So you could, if there's several equidistant tiles, you can choose which one to flip over. And what the scanning really does is it does 2 things. First, it's sort of like looking ahead at what's in the base of what you can move into, because Rocketeers may not enter unscanned tiles. But secondly, it's actually spawning monsters, because when you flip a tile over, what you're going to do is flip the tile over itself, and there's an arrow on each tile pointing in a certain direction, and you just want to make sure that as you flip tiles over, the arrows always align in the same direction. You're also going to flip over the 2 tokens that were on top of the tile. Remember that I said when you set the board up, you put all the tiles face down, but you also put down an alien token and a discovery token on each tile. So you're going to flip the tile over. Now you're going to flip over the alien token and the discovery token. The alien token almost always lists 3 alien models to put there. And they could be different combinations. It could be a leader and 2 saucermen. Or it could be 3 leeches. Or it could be a bug, an alien, a bug, a saucerman, and a leader. Whatever. It could be all kinds of combinations.
Yeah.
And all you do is you grab those pieces of plastic that match those guys. And by the way, I should say that there's a card for each monster type in the game, for each alien type, and those are face up. And so there's an image right on the back of the card that shows you what the models look like. So there's no confusion about this. So you're like, okay, I got to grab a saucerman. So you grab a saucerman plastic, you put it on the tile, and so most of the time the monsters spawn in the tile you just flipped over. The only exception to this is bugs. So bugs actually spawn from the vent nearest to the tile you spawned from. And there's a nice tie-breaking rule where if there's more than one tile that is the same distance with vents in it, it goes to the lower numbered tiles, and all the tiles have little numbers on them. So very simple to figure that out. And that's kind of neat because the bugs start sort of pouring out of the vents. And what happened to us was our shuttle dock, which has a vent in it, and almost immediately it was the closest vent to all these places, and the bugs started pouring out the vent in our shuttle. And I'm like, who is the idiot that connected our ventilation system? And all the bugs are pouring out, which is kind of funny. So
nice.
That's kind of neat. But anyway, so basically you turn the tile over, you're going to get some aliens there, and you're also going to see a discovery token that's going to flip over, and you're going to realize that's some cool piece of kit I might want to pick up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So scanning's really simple. You flip over a tile, you go, oh crap, more aliens. But they don't activate yet. The aliens don't activate till all the Rocketeers have gone. So now it's that Rocketeer's turn who just put his token down on the scanning spot. Now it's his or her turn to take their actions. Okay? And each Rocketeer generally has 3 action tokens on their card that they can activate. And there's a little spot for not activated and activated. So all you basically do is slide the token to the right and say, okay, I'm going to do a general action, then I'm going to do another general action, or I'm going to do my non-combat action or whatever. You can pick any order you want. Right? And so the combat action is very simple. It's always an attack. More about that in a second. The non-combat actions are also pretty simple. One non-combat action allows you to move from one space to another. The other action you can do is open a hatch. So many of these tiles, when you flip them over, have some of the edges, and they're hexagons, right? Some of the edges are open. Some of the edges have hatches on them. So if there's ever a hatch between you and the tile you want to move into, you have to open the hatch first, and it's a non-combat action to open a hatch. Also, the Rocketeers generally cannot draw a line of sight through hatches. There actually is a piece of equipment called X-ray goggles, which is just like the old X-ray goggles cartoons to the back of old comic books, which is kind of funny. If you're wearing X-ray goggles, you can actually see through hatches, but otherwise, hatches are in the way. You got to open them to shoot through them. One note of caution, in the end of the turn after the aliens go, all the hatches automatically close. So don't think by opening a hatch you're keeping them open forever. The aliens all have psychic powers, so it's very
annoying aliens.
Also remember that because the aliens have psychic powers, when it's their turn, they can psychically open the door, blast you, and psychically close the door again. So watch out for that as well. They're very tricksy, these aliens. So you can move, you can open a hatch. There's this concept called the IQ test, which lets you do some things like heal people or analyze new equipment you found or subdue thralls. More about that in a second. And also, your other non-combat action you can do is use your talent.
Uh-huh.
So let's talk about overkill and how combat works real quick, because that'll help us define all this stuff.
Yeah.
So the combat action is really simple in this game. What you're basically going to do is try to hit the alien by rolling a pool of dice. Now, the number of dice you get to roll is based on the weapon you're choosing. So when you look at one of your weapons, let's say it's a beam rifle, on the bottom of the weapon you're going to see a little row of hexes, And in the first row of hexes is going to be a red circle and a number in it. And then the more the hexes go to the right, the numbers change. And this is indicating the range. So if they're in the same square as you, that's the red hex. And if they're 1 hex away, you use the number that's 1 hex away. If they're 2 hexes away, etc. So it's telling you the range. The numbers in the hexes is how many dice you get to roll at that range. So some weapons are really good at close range, like the shotgun, and not so good at long range. Other weapons are better at long range and not so good at short range. And so when you're picking your gear, and this is why Craig was talking about it's good to understand the mechanics. When you're picking your gear, it's good to know how this range mechanic works so you understand if you're picking a long range weapon or a short range weapon or some combination, right?
Yeah.
So the dice system is very simple. The more dice you roll, the better.
Obviously.
All modifiers in this game, whenever you see a modifier like +1 combat roll, +1 IQ test, that's just adding to or subtracting the number of dice you get to roll. You never modify the roll.
Yeah.
And when you roll your D10s, what you're looking for is a 1, 2, or 3.
Is that true for all weapons?
All weapons and all IQ tests.
All tests in the whole game, right, are looking for 1, 2, and 3.
All tests are looking for successes, and a success is any time a die shows 1, 2, or 3. So you've got basically roughly a third chance that you will succeed for every die you roll. So you're going to roll. So like the beam rifle, I believe, has 5 dice at ranges 1 and 2, and it throws only 2 dice at close combat range in the same square, and it throws like 3 dice at range 3, right?
Oh, okay.
So at range 1 or range 2, you're throwing 5 dice, and you're hoping for, you want to get as many dice as you can that equal 1, 2, or 3. That's a success, right?
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
On the surface of that looks like it will be very frustrating because you're not going to be getting a lot of successes. But in effect, what this actually does is you don't really need usually more than 1 or 2 successes. So with 5 dice, you got a pretty good chance of getting 1, maybe 2. And then in a tight spot, you're really hoping that you get more than that. And that's going to be like this really cool thing where everybody around the table kind of stands up and shouts, which is really cool. But at the same time, getting 1 is probably going to do what you need to get done, and all the other ones after that are going to be cool extra things that you can make happen. So it's not as frustrating as only having a 30% chance to hit makes it sound.
Right. If you're rolling 1 die and getting a 30% chance of success, that's going to be a disappointment 70% of the time.
Exactly. Built into the game, and I, for one, don't like playing games where I spend a lot of time frustrated. So you can take it from me that this doesn't give you that feeling when you're playing the game. That 30% chance is on a single die. And there will be times when you only get 1 die, but that's not common. And you kind of want to steer your character in the direction of their strengths, which is where they'll be rolling more than 1 or 2 dice.
That's right.
If you're throwing 2 dice, you've got a 51% chance of getting at least 1 success.
Well, see, there you go.
And most tests, like a bad IQ. So all characters have an IQ.
Yep.
And all these weapons throw a certain amount of dice. And most characters have an IQ of 3 or better, and most weapons throw 3 or more dice in most situations, at least in their optimal spot. So in most cases, the odds are with you that you're going to get a success.
At least 1, exactly.
Yes, and all you really need is 1 success, as Craig said, to do what you want to do. In fact, when you're shooting your gun, 4 successes does not mean you cause 4 wounds. You can only ever do 1 wound with the success for an attack. However, no matter what kind of test you're making, whether it's an IQ test or a combat test, any extra successes are what's called overkill.
And this is where I think this game shines.
Really cool, innovative mechanic.
Yeah.
So how it works is, when you get extra successes, these overkills, you then go to special rules that are available and choose which overkill effect you'd like to use, and you can look in different places, depending on what you're doing, where you can use those overkill effects.
Yeah.
So the first and foremost, the one you're going to see a lot of, is your character themselves. That talent I mentioned earlier, every character right at the bottom of their character sheet says overkill effect, talent. And that effect can be used anytime you get an overkill. So whether you're making an IQ test or a combat check, you get your overkill talent. Now, for different people, that's different things. For the doctor, it means you can heal somebody near you a point. So you can be shooting an alien and healing the guy next to you. If you're the first officer, the security officer, his thing might be strafing and hitting another alien. So he can basically be making an IQ test and shooting an alien with his offhand at the same time, right? So it lends to these really interesting storytelling moments. But there's other cool places you can pull overkill from as well. Every weapon has an overkill effect. So now, if I'm firing my beam rifle, I can choose to either have and I roll an extra success, I can choose now to use my character's overkill effect, or I can choose to use the beam rifle's overkill effect, which is to push an alien away some number of squares. So now, do I want to push the alien away, or do I want to heal a character from a doctor? But wait, there's more. Every alien you shoot also has an overkill effect that you, the attacker, get when you shoot the alien. So, for example, the leaders and the saucermen are all connected psionically. When you kill one of them, they have an overkill effect called Psychic Scream, which will stun another saucerman of your choice. So when I choose saucerman, now I can choose between my character's overkill effect, his ability, or his gun's weapon, or take advantage of the fact that I just shot a saucerman in the forehead and count it as I stunned another nearby saucerman.
That's unnecessarily graphic.
Yes. But that's what happens. You start thinking of this stuff while you're playing the game, which is awesome. If you're making an IQ test, these come from different places, right? They come from the alien you're affecting, the target of your attack, your weapon, and your ability, right? Does that make sense, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it's a way to get 4 choices, which is not overwhelming, but it gives you a good variety.
That's right.
It's also where you were saying earlier, the asymmetry of the characters really shines because it gives you these options so that your healer isn't just most games. The healer is gonna I'm not very good at shooting. I'm just gonna sit back and heal people, and that's not really fun. But the party needs it in order to make it. In this game, the healer's right up there with whatever gun that he bought, so he's effective shooting. But he's also these secondary roles that he's getting if he's getting any luck at all. He's healing people, or he's moving the monsters around with the weapons that he's got. So it's a really a great opportunity for these other, what normally in a sort of a classic dungeon crawl scenario, like your cleric is really going to shine because everybody's putting out damage, but in addition, he's doing this one cool thing where he's healing, or the commander is giving people an additional move, or the technician is stunning additional enemy model. So it's a really cool way of getting that sort of asymmetry, but giving everybody a moment where they shine, which is what a lot of these games try to set out and do. And I think a lot of them, meet a greater or lesser rate of success on that.
What I like about it too is they're able to inject sort of weaknesses into the aliens, right? So like the bugs have an exterminate overkill rule, which basically means when you shoot a bug and you kill one with an overkill, you can kill another bug next to it. So basically, anybody can wipe out lots of bugs if they get a little lucky.
Yeah.
What's also really cool is this idea that when you roll really well, as Craig mentioned earlier, that stand-up die roll, and you get like 4 successes out of the blue on 5 dice, which is crazy lucky. All of a sudden, you have all these great options, and it allows them to interject some really cool gear in the game. Like there's this one bit of alien tech you can find, which is a psychic link. And if a character has that, he can choose from any other character's overkill ability whenever he rolls an overkill.
Oh, great.
Tapping. So all kinds of cool extra mechanics that we're able to leverage this overkill mechanic, and it really is the defining part of this game that you'll really grow to love as soon as you start playing it. And it's also really important to understand the mechanic, as Craig mentioned, when you're picking your gear, because the pistol, for example, does less damage, but its overkill ability is you get to move. So you can be a very on-the-run sort of shooter with a pistol, whereas the rifle doesn't give you that, but instead it gives you the ability to push aliens back from you kind of stuff. Really interesting stuff. So that's really most of the mechanics of combat and non-combat. Yeah. One thing I did want to highlight is one of the IQ tests. So the thralls, right? So each alien card has special rules for each alien, and one of the aliens is the thrall. Now the thrall, you can kind of imagine as sort of a cross between kind of like Borg, where they've been taken over by the aliens, but we in the Rocket Patrol know they can be saved. And because we know they can be saved, we're not allowed to attack them.
You're not allowed to shoot them.
So you can't shoot the thralls. What you do instead is you get into their square and you make an IQ subdual test. So you're going to roll your IQ check. If you succeed, you remove the thrall from the board. But if you get overkill on the thrall, so if you succeed with overkill, you can choose to use your ability, or you can choose the thrall's overkill ability, which is you get to draw from the rescue thrall deck. So there's this deck of cards of basically you draw from this deck, and that indicates the kind of human you just saved from being a thrall. So you might find a nurse who can help heal your party. You might find a small boy who can run around and grab gear for you. You might find a hobo who's got an alien soothing harmonica. You never know what you're going to find, and it sort of adds to the charm, and all of a sudden you really feel like you're rescuing people. And so your characters do feel like they're leveling up because you're not only finding these discovery tokens, but you're also getting these thralls and adding them to your party, and all of a sudden you get this entourage walking down the corridors with all these people and gear on yourself. It's pretty interesting. There's no limit to the number of thralls or gear you can be carrying either, which adds to sort of the golden age of sci-fi feel. So that's really the combat. That's really the crux of the game. Now, there's a few free actions you can do. that don't count as an action point, so you can always pick up a discovery token in your square. You can always use any of your gear cards, non-weapon gear cards, for free once per activation. And as Craig mentioned earlier, you can spend once per turn, you can spend an O2 token, an O2 cube, to take an extra action. So that can be very powerful at key moments in the game where you really want to get that extra turn to blast that last alien before it's their turn.
But you're feeling the pressure because you don't know when any of these events might flip that's going to cost you an oxygen.
That's right. So, Jeff, are you making sense so far? The combat system, the overkill and all that?
Yeah. I'm ready to play.
Yeah, nice. Well, one last thing you want to know is, what about those pesky aliens? Because now we've spent our O2. So Craig's going to go and do that. He takes the first player token. Then Jeff's going to go. He's going to take the player 2 token. He's going to do his scan. So what happens is the first player goes, he scans the first place, you see 3 aliens, he blasts them. Ha-ha! No problem. But then Jeff goes, and he's the medic, he's not really as much of a killer, and he flips it over, there's 3 more aliens. Uh-oh, well, I killed one of them, there's 2 left. And then I go, and I clip another token over, there's 3 more aliens. So I kill 1. So now at the end of our turn, there's 4 aliens left. Well, what do? Well, now you go to the alien turn. And in the alien turn, remember I mentioned there's a card for each alien type. So there's a card for the alien leader, there's the card for the alien saucermen, there's a card for the bugs, there's all kinds of different aliens. And these aliens all have a sentient number, indicating how smart they are, but it also indicates their turn order. So you always process the aliens by type, by their sentience from lowest to highest. So the number 1 guy goes first through the last guy. And what's interesting about this is they all have slightly different movement rules. Generally, the aliens will try to get an attack off. And if they're in a spot to get an attack, they won't move. They'll just take their attack. If they're not, they will move. But each card tells you how they'll do that. What's interesting is the bugs. So the bugs' first rule is they'll actually try to swarm first. So all bugs will move to be together in one big mob. And once they're in, and they'll even move away from the Rocketeers to do this. But once they're in one giant mob, then they can move one for every bug in the mob. They can streak across the board. And then they can attack for every bug in the mob that hasn't moved. So all of a sudden, there's this giant mob of they go from these little annoying skittery things that don't seem like a big deal to all of a sudden, oh my God, there's 10 bugs together, which is kind of neat. But basically, there's some neat special rules in here too, like when the leaders move, they bring all the saucermen with them, which is particularly scary because the leaders move first in their sentience order, and any square the leaders move through, they also pick up all the saucermen there. So all of a sudden, the leader moves 2, picks up, let's say, 4 saucermen on the way by. Now all the saucermen go, and they're even closer to you. So all of a sudden, they actually feel like leaders. So I really felt like the AI that get built into the cards actually makes the aliens work differently depending on the alien type and feel more like aliens. What did you think about that, Craig?
I really enjoyed the way that it worked, and it seemed to go smoothly. It wasn't like a kind of a clunky AI, and it gave you a really clear hierarchy of targets when you're getting attacked. You know who you need to kind of target as they're coming in because they kind of work together sort of. So
that's right.
I really liked it. It gave you a feel that it wasn't just like and then they're going to do this, then they're going to do that. It was more of you can kind of manipulate where they're going based on the order of that the players go to, but at the same time, because there's so many different types of bad guys, there's a lot of different things that they're going to do. You need to keep all that in mind at the same time. So it kept the battlefield kinetic enough that it felt like it was a real situation rather than just you're playing sort of a mechanical if this then that scenario.
Right. And it's really interesting because the doors we mentioned earlier, so some of the aliens on their cards can move through the doors and some cannot.
Yes.
And so you can kind of use the doors to your advantage. Like the leeches can't move through the doors. So maybe you can arrange it such a way that the leeches can't really get to you because they're boxed in, or you've locked the doors, because there are actions you can take to lock doors and things. You can also blast doors so they're permanently open based on gear and things. So that's really interesting. But also what will happen is you think you got it all locked down, and then all of a sudden some new alien will spawn that totally screws up your battle plans, right? Like the big guy that'll charge and hit at every single Rocketeer in his space gets panic, which is nasty because all of a sudden your oxygen starts running out. So there are some really nasty combos where you think you have it locked down, all of a sudden your whole plan falls apart. So I was with you, Craig. I didn't feel like I knew the aliens were all programmed, but it didn't feel programmed to me for some reason. It kind of worked.
I'm working on a solo version for Battlestations and trying to figure out how to do AI for enemies. And one of the big problems I'm running into is getting them to run a starship, because in a dungeon crawl, pretty much who are they going to attack is the only question to make. But in Battlestations, I'm worried about are they going to run and attack the borders, or are they going to turn the ship so that they're not running into the star?
Right.
And so there's this a different kind of hierarchy, and I want to throw some randomness in there so it's not obvious. Like in a game of Pac-Man, you can always go left and the ghost will go right, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, but a little bit of randomness, so you don't know whether they're going to come shoot you or they're going to try to move the ship or get more power or whatever.
Right. I think they did a good job with this, and I think we should probably mention a couple little things that we didn't. So one of the things is when the aliens attack, they have a pool. Each alien card has their own number of attack dice, and they have their own overkill options when they overkill you. So different aliens call different overkill things. So, for example, the saucermen have mind control. So if the saucermen, and they only throw 2 dice. So the odds of them getting overkill are pretty low. So when they shoot at Craig, for example, they roll 2 dice. If they only get 1 success, Craig takes a hit point of damage, right? But if they roll 2 successes, Craig then takes a point of damage, but also the alien mind controls him. And how that works is he's got to take one of his action tokens and put it in this little mind control slot on his sheet, which basically means he's going to be down 1 action next turn as he tries to mentally fight off the alien. Yep. So that's kind of cool. And they're all different, right? So some of the mind control, some of the overkill makes the alien move a little extra or whatever. So they all have their own things, which again gives them their own little AI that only kicks in when the dice rolls go their way, which is sort of neat. The other thing is there are many times when the aliens are equidistant from one or more Rocketeers, and so how do they choose which Rocketeer to attack? Well, this is where those little turn order tokens come in again, because the aliens will always attack, if they have multiple targets, they'll always attack the player with the highest turn order number. So they'll attack the player that went the last, right, the most recently. So that's really interesting, because the players can manipulate, then, who is the most likely to be shot, but only so much, because as soon as you split up and start sending guys in different areas, then when the aliens still attack the closest model if that's not an option. So it's sort of an interesting problem. We started trying to use that to our advantage and say, well, we want to make our tank sort of the target, so he'll go last. And then he gets hammered, and they're like, oh, we can't.
Right,
and then it starts dictating your order of activation, which takes some of your strategy away, which is sort of an interesting problem to try to solve, right? So it was pretty neat. I really like that part of it as well. So that's the alien turn. And last, that's really the whole game. The last is just a cleanup thing, which is really simple. You go through these 4 steps, and on the back of one of the books is this quick reference card, which makes it really easy. It also comes with 2 card stock quick reference cards that makes all this stuff really easy. So you're just going to recover stunned aliens. So there are some overkill effects that stun aliens, which basically means during the Rocketeer's turn who does that, you knock them down. And then during the aliens' turn, they don't do anything. And then in the cleanup phase, you stand them back up. You're also going to remove all hatch tokens, because remember, hatches close again, which always stinks. You got to reopen them. Also, reset your action point tokens. And then you're going to put those scan order tokens back in the center of the table, because now next turn, the Rocketeers could change their order of activation, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And then you rinse and repeat, and you go as long as the mission dictates. Now, there's a few other things of note that we should talk about. First of all, and this is, again, where Craig made the mention earlier that before you take on one of these serious adventures, you really kind of got to know the basics of the game overall. And this is something that I played a solo mode of this, and the simplest mission in the book. And the simplest mission in the book skipped red alert mode. So we discovered this to our own chagrin later. So the game does have a timer. And how the timer works is, remember I told you that each turn, each Rocketeer scans a tile and flips it over. So when the entire map is scanned, at some point, there's going to be no more tiles to flip over. When that happens, the game enters what's called red alert mode. And there's a set of red alert tokens that you shuffle up, and you put them all face down, and now in each player's scan phase, instead of turning a tile over, they flip over a red alert token.
And those are really good? They're really helpful?
No,
they're very helpful.
They are not. They are either no effect, or more likely, they spawn some combination of aliens, and the mission tells you where they spawn. So they go from randomly spawning on whatever tile you hope for to usually the most strategically bad spot on the map. So in our case, our job was to deactivate certain places on the space station and then get back to our shuttle. Once red alert mode kicked in, all the aliens spawned on our shuttle.
That was awful. That was crazy.
So we're like, oh. And I think if we'd known the severity of red alert mode, we would have played more aggressively on the whole exploring part and realized that once red alert mode kicks in, and by the way, if you run out of red alert tokens, then you just go to spawning alien tokens, and you're just basically turning over any unused alien tokens in the box. And there's quite a few of those.
Real quick question. When you're scanning, do you have to scan the next closest space that hasn't been scanned?
You do, but if there's some equidistant ones, you can choose.
Okay.
But you always have to flip a tile over somewhere on the map. So eventually, you're going to run out of tiles, and it's going to be dependent on your Rocketeers, right? Because don't forget, each turn, each Rocketeer flips over one tile. So if there's 2 tiles per game turn, that's 2 tiles per game turn. But if there's 6 Rocketeers, it's 6 tiles per game turn. So you can imagine pretty quickly that a full game turn, this is another way the game scales, right? Because more Rocketeers mean less actions per Rocketeer before red alert mode hits, right?
Right.
Which is sort of interesting. And it did run us into trouble. We actually, I think, lost the game. We actually only lost by like 1 turn. I think if we
it was close.
It was actually very close.
But it was those last few turns were desperate.
They were. We could tell we were in trouble, which is what you want. It's a co-op game. It's not Ghost Stories hard, but it's got some challenges, which is good. So there's that. I think there's a large variety of missions in the game, which I really like. In the core game, but then also if you get the hardcover book, there's even more. But the core game's got like I think 15 missions in it, which is great. And there's a 1-player mission specifically for 1 player, but up to 6-player, really large missions, which is great. We didn't cover schematics. So some of the things you can find, not only can you find equipment, but you can also find schematics, which then require gathering certain resources that are on Discovery tokens to build things. And these have become very powerful gear, which is an optional rule that's pretty cool. And there's some other nice optional rules, which include one of the optional rules, which is nice, is that having the players decide on their player order can lead to some analysis paralysis, right? So the debate of who should go first, who should go second, who should go third can actually take a lot more time than actually activating. Mm-hmm. So one of the alternate play styles which I thought was neat was instead of being able to choose your player order, you always go in the order of lowest hit points to highest hit points. And what that does is it removes the debate, and secondly, the healthiest player always goes last, which makes him the most likely player
biggest
the alien
target,
shoot.
yeah.
Right. So that's a nice mode if you get into a lot of arguments with your friends.
Yeah.
Also, there's difficulty levels. So there are very simple scaling modes. So if you find the game too hard, one of the simple ways to make it easier is you always ignore the 3rd alien on the alien tile when you spawn. So instead of spawning 3 aliens every tile, you can only spawn 2. You can spawn 2. And there's ways to make it harder as well. So if you find the game too easy or too hard, you can easily adjust it for your play group and play style, which I also liked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much the whole game. Jeff, did it make sense?
It did. I'm actually really looking forward to playing this game.
Excellent.
Now,
Well, before we get into final thoughts, Craig.
Yes.
In the style of a Rocketeer,
Yes.
slowly losing his thoughts due to alien mind control.
Aha.
Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Okay. Let me find the settings on my Space Cadet helmet. My friends, here, as we make our last stand on the bridge, you must realize that our victory is one that will live through the ages, and it will. We should actually rate it against all of the other great victories that we have made. And let's say that a really great victory, like a really, really fabulous victory, was like a low number, like a 2, like let's say a D6, and then we're going to roll it. And the more numbers are good, so a low roll and a low, good, high, bad.
Nice. Nicely done. So basically...
Well played.
I lost the thread there. I don't know. Mind control, something.
Low roll, good game is basically what we're saying here.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, we'll let you go last so you can hear Craig and my final thoughts, and you're going to rate it on how likely you'd like to play / buy the game. All right, so here we go.
All right.
So, Craig, what were your final thoughts?
Well, Russ, my final thoughts were, I think this is a very deep game, deceptively deep game. In fact, I really enjoyed it. There is a learning curve, and I think that you can quickly pick. It's one of those, kind of that sweet spot, easy to pick up, hard to master sort of scenarios. But like I said, I think you need to have a learning game. You don't want to commit to a whole evening before you know everything that sort of the ins and outs of the way all the pieces are going to work together, because it's got a lot of moving parts. So I would highly recommend, no matter what your player count is, that you run through a turn very fast for everybody so they see how the overkill works, how the different pieces of equipment might work, how the different weapons work. So you've got a good idea of the kind of equipment that you want to buy and the kind of character that you want to run. That having been said, I didn't think there was a single lose. We had all the characters running at once because we were playing a 6 player game. There was not one of those characters that seemed sort of extraneous or unnecessary. Everybody had a cool thing that they could do. Either you had the high IQ that we needed for you to activate some part of the space station, or you were really good at combat, better than everybody else because of your overkill skills. So you were the guy that was kind of like cover firing everybody as you were moving through the space station. You were healing people as they were dying. We had two different characters who had O2 bottles, so they were passing out oxygen so that people would be able to do more actions. And so there wasn't any character that was kind of like the mule of the whole group. I thought that was great, and that really comes from the overkill. The components were fantastic. I don't think they missed a trick. I think it's all really nicely blinged out. The gem cubes, the translucent gem cubes were a really cool way. It felt like you were really trading in oxygen as you were passing those around. And it was a really, really great, fun experience that we could have all of us working together. So there was no sense of any kind of animosity or contention at the table. Everybody was working together, and it was certainly not a pushover because we lost. But at the same time, I think we lost because we let the game get away from us. The timer is definitely there. It's hidden. It's built into baked into the game. So it's not like, okay, we have 2 more turns. It's more of a question of, you're starting to push the limit, and the red alerts going off and everything. Really, really enjoyed the game. I would say, I'm going to say a straight up 3+ on a D6. And your average gamer is going to like it on a die roll of a 3+. I think that if you really like co-op or you really like dungeon crawls, it's going to be a +1.
Nice. That's a great raise. Yeah. So I'm with you. I love the feel of this game. So I backed this Kickstarter even without Steven sort of pitching me on it. It had everything I wanted. It's a dungeon crawl. I like the golden age of sci-fi, and I love the models. So I was all in from the get-go, and I was not disappointed when my box came in the mail, except when I wasn't having my brains in my jar. So thank you, Steven. But I like it. I love how it plays. And it does do a lot of things. I generally like games with an overlord for dungeon crawling more than the pure co-op. But this is the first game where I like Wrath of Ashardalon and the D&D dungeon crawl games, but the monsters definitely feel programmed there. Here they didn't as much. Here, the interactions between them, like a saucerman by himself wasn't a big deal. 2 saucermen and a leader was a big deal. Someone killed that leader before he takes control of those saucermen. You just knew it was going to be bad. So it definitely felt more like the theme was definitely there. I love the flavor of the theme. I love all the weapons, the cards, the art. I like the language on the back. There's a little blurb for each mission. The flavor is definitely there. And because of the rescuing the thralls and everything else, the quotes kind of write themselves. So we had we were quoting a lot of aliens, and I think Amy's character found a little girl, and so we're like quoting aliens. They only come out at night, mostly. All that stuff was happening, which is great. I had this hobo who had this alien subduing harmonica. And basically his effect was he had limited uses before his harmonica spittle ran out or something. But he could, if I went into a hex, all the aliens were immediately stunned there. And so I was so excited about this ability, I used it all up. But I realized that the quote for my game was always husband your hobo.
Yes.
Because if I had husband the hobo, at the end, when they red alert and all the aliens were filling up our shuttle, we could have ran back to the shuttle, used the hobo, and escaped.
Because that shuttle was chock full
of
aliens, not nuts.
We even had the tools. I just didn't put it all together. So there's always the problem solving happening there, and always a tough challenge. And it's not always the obvious challenge is kill the aliens and you'll win. So it's pretty neat. As Craig mentioned, very, very easy to teach, but there's a lot to learn there to master it. And just know there is a timer.
Yes.
Just watch for the timer and you'll do fine. But anyway, really like this one. If you like dungeon crawls, you like co-op games, this is something you should really take a look at. And I'm with Craig. I'm going to rate it as a 3+ and a +1 if you like golden age sci-fi or dungeon crawls.
Yes.
So Jeff, after all of that, what is your likelihood to want to play and try the game?
I am definitely going to play the game. And it's just a question of, for me as a publisher, sometimes I can run into people at a convention and swap games.
Yep.
And so I look at it that way. And sometimes games are so good that I say I just have to plunk down the cash and buy it. So I don't know if there's a convention coming up soon enough that I'll be able to get into the library and check one out and look at it, or I might just have to go ahead and buy it because I do sci-fi, and it's kind of like I had to buy Imperial Assault. Maybe I have to get this one too because it's important and valuable to me, aside from the fact that it looks like it's going to be really, really fun, which is just totally irrelevant.
Yeah, well, as a sci-fi nerd, I don't think you'll be disappointed because it's all in there, right? Especially if you like the old stuff. It's all there. So great stuff. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show this time.
Absolutely.
And taking time out of your busy schedule now post Kickstarter and trying to get the delivery stuff all together.
Yeah, well, thanks for showing off this game to me and all the chat, and it's been fun.
No, yeah, well, please do. And hey, so if people want to find out more about what you're up to or Battlestations or anything else, where on the internet should they go?
GorillaBoardGames.com. That's my website.
Awesome.
Very nice.
And all your stuff's there, your Twitter handle and Facebook and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm at Jeff Siadek, and yeah, you can find everything. It should be there. And if it's not, my marketing guy's an idiot, and my marketing guy is me. So there we are.
There you go. Well, Jeff, thank you again so much for.
I can't wait to check out Battlestations.
Yeah, I can't either. I'm
boarding party,
gonna,
landing party.
That's something I don't know. Oh my god!
All right, Jeff. Thanks again, and take care now.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you guys.
This Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, the men and women who help us keep the lights on and our wives at bay. And today I would in particular like to thank Jeremy, Travis, Scott Loeffler, Brent Kreinop, and Harold John Vogel. Thank you, guys. Thank you for everything you do. Thanks for your help and your support. And thank everybody who has checked out our video and kicked a tip into the jar every now and then. Did you ever notice how quickly something can get so out of hand you don't even recognize it? Or if things get really strange and the universe raps on you, you recognize it too well? That sort of happened to me this past couple of weeks. And it's been a very strange, I'm going through a very strange gaming period. Lots of my gaming friends are doing lots of different things. Some of them are doing things I would rather not do. Some of them are doing things that make me uncomfortable. It's just a whole gamut of things. And every one of them is legitimate, and I'm not I'm not finding fault, and nobody owes me a game day or anything. And I've got to somehow learn to navigate that situation, and I'm doing my best. On top of that, of course, we have PattyCon, which is a big game day where between 30 and 40 people usually are over here playing games and filling up the house, usually the downstairs area where we can have 3, 4, maybe even at times 5 game tables going. So it can get a little crowded, but, it's nice. And, of course, this year we had the flood. So right around the time the invitations were going to go out for PattyCon, that happened. And I made an announcement that we weren't going to be able to do PattyCon, which of course stunk given that this was probably going to be my only chance to get all of these people together, which used to happen every Tuesday. And so things progressed, and if you followed me on Twitter at D6G Craig, then you know that the pub really got a quick facelift very quickly. Our handyman, Ken, who sadly is not on any kind of social media, so I can't help him out at all, worked great. He worked super, super hard, super, super fast. And in less than half the time we thought, he completely finished the new floor on the pub, some nice doors that can separate the pub. So when I'm working, when I'm recording, or when I'm writing, everybody kind of just knows to give me some space. And everything worked out great, including the downstairs got all cleared and everything. And Karen worked really hard. And the next thing you knew, we were 2 days away from, well, actually, I skipped a little piece. We decided we still wanted to do something, but we had less than half a house. And so we used to have these couples games nights with 2 different groups of friends, predominantly my friends at one point, and then predominantly Karen's friends at one point. And so we were still friends with most of those people. And so we thought, what if we bring those groups back together again and have just a little group? And instead of having everybody but not inviting family or kids, which has been a huge debate for us over the last few years as everybody's kids start to get old enough to game, we thought, what if we just bring those really old friends, like my friends from high school and a couple other couples that we've grown really close to outside of gaming, having nothing to do with gaming, although they happen to like games too. And so Karen got to invite some people, and I got to invite some people, and there was an awful lot of overlap for me, so I'm not going to complain. And that was the plan. We thought we were all going to be upstairs, and it was going to be crowded because we were going to have to put all the temporary tables up there, and we only have like a few little rooms upstairs that we could use. But it would be fun, and it wouldn't be that big a deal, and no pressure. And it's certainly not PattyCon, so it's not like I'm not inviting everybody to PattyCon. It'll be great. So fast forward back again to 2 days before the date for what that would have been PattyCon, which coincidentally the 2 days before would be actually St. Patrick's Day. And Karen has worked like a demon to completely clean the downstairs. And so if I work really hard to get the pub back in order with all the furniture and everything, we could actually have those friends come over and they could be in the pub. And that literally, we were working right to the wire on the day everybody was showing up. When people were showing up, I was still cleaning and neatening stuff up. And we got to play in the pub, which was great because at the pub I've rearranged it a little bit and I've put some furniture. Karen put some furniture where it looks a little nicer than it did. So, and we've made a little adjustments with how many actual miniature games tables I need. I've cut it down to one. So there's like a nice board game table that takes up less space, obviously. So the whole place looks a little nicer, a little roomier. And it was great. And everybody showed up thinking they were going to PattyCon. And so the next thing you know, everybody's referring it to as PattyCon, except for me, who keeps saying, guys, it's not PattyCon. Oh, I love PattyCon. It's not PattyCon. Oh, I can't wait for next year's PattyCon. Guys, it's not PattyCon. And we've got all the kids. So the house is packed because I didn't do the math. And just these few couples and their children end up being more people than all of the adults that used to come to PattyCon. So it's a good thing that downstairs got opened up. Because the kids were outside running around before they play a game. Then they would come in and play games, kill grown-ups in high heavens, and then they would run out again. So it was a great, great time. And I didn't feel bad at all until later in the evening when most of the people had gone home. And some people were like, whoa, this was a great PattyCon. And I was like, it's not a PattyCon. And they started pointing out, look, we're in the pub and we had some corned beef and cabbage and I'm wearing my green shirt and it's a PattyCon. And I was like, oh, well, I hope nobody feels like they didn't get invited to PattyCon because it wasn't PattyCon in my head, but now I feel bad. And but when I say something that annoys people in the local gaming group on the podcast, they invariably hear it and let me know. So I'm assuming that those same people are going to hear my words right now and know that they were not excluded from PattyCon because PattyCon in my head never happened, and that's the way it is. So it was odd. So yeah, that happened. And then everything kind of fell apart the next Tuesday. For me. Actually, no, that one went well. That was the Guild Ball. And then the week after that was this week, and I had every intention of playing Guild Ball again or doing something cool, and slowly, bit by bit, everything fell apart and blah, blah, blah. And I had like this real moment where I was like, oh, why won't people play the games I want to play? And then I realized that it doesn't make sense to get upset. No, if they're playing games, it's our leisure time. Right? They don't owe me games that I want to play if that's not what they want to do with their leisure time. That's not fair for me, of me, to hold them to that kind of standard. And so I had this, I want to almost say psychotic split. I don't know. And I thought, you know what? It's a Tuesday. I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to see what happens and I'm going to go with the flow. And, I got my my order of the Marvel Universe miniatures game from Night Models, and so I went and I picked that up, and I had all the cool little rule books, and then I thought, well, you know what? I want to go see Deadpool again. And I looked up the time, and I thought, I've got an hour and a half. Now I've got an hour and a half. I could go to McDonald's across the street or Wendy's. I'm trying to eat well, but at the same time, but then an hour and a half sitting in McDonald's, and then so I've got it in my head now that I'm eating alone. And then I think, there's an amazing Italian restaurant right down the street, like about 10 minutes away from the movie theater. And I've gone to another, there's 3 different locations in New Hampshire. It's called Giorgio's. And actually I think it's down to 2 locations, but because they closed one because it was not as fancy as the other 2. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go to Giorgio's and get some Italian. I'm by myself, and I don't care. I mean, I've been on business trips and it's things like that and eaten alone a million times, so that doesn't really bother me. But I walk in, and it's clearly couples night, and there's 2 people here, 2 people there, 2 people there. The place is packed. They're like, no, sorry, sir. There's like a half-hour wait, and how many in your party? And I was like, can you seat 1? And they're like, oh, yeah, we should be able to seat 1. So I sat there. And I have never in my life indulged myself the way I indulged myself this Tuesday. So I had the Marvel Miniatures rulebook, and I was reading that, and I was listening to all the first dates going on around me, and that was kind of funny. And I was looking at the menu, and I got my favorite chicken parm, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get that. And you know what? Throw in the Caesar salad, absolutely. And you know what? I'll take a glass of that $9 a glass Pinot Grigio, because why not? So I had wine, which I almost never have. And, of course, I had a Diet Coke on top of that. And I had a blast. And it went right up to, like, it was right at the wire. And like I was almost not going to make my movie if I got out of it, but it was perfect. The timing was great. It was like tick, 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 and made all the things. Everything was great. I left an enormous tip because why not? At that point, I was like, woohoo! My entire week's allowance basically on that one evening. And then I went to the movies, and my friend Pete, who had heard that I was thinking about going to the movies, showed up at the movies. So that was fun too. So we watched Deadpool, which of course is a great fun movie. And I came home earlier than I normally would from a game night, and I was completely relaxed. Might have something to do with the wine, and I had a blast. So I think my takeaway from that is that I need to do what I want to do that's going to be relaxing to me, and that's usually playing games with my friends. But sometimes it's not, and sometimes they're going to be doing stuff that I don't want to do, or I'm not going to have fun with, or they're going to go someplace I don't want to go, and that's perfectly fine. Which I know that's not part of the issue. The issue is me getting frustrated and disappointed, and instead what I have to do is kind of turn it around. Now, I'm not going to spend $100 on myself again the next time this happens, but I might go to the movies and just have fun or whatever. And so it's that whole using that time wisely, I think, is what really kind of sort of spun my whole gaming situation on me this past week. And I talked it out with a couple close friends, and I think, I mean, this is at least, a way for me to get what I need to get out of that time. And I think they're right. And I can't wait for next game night. Of course, AdeptCon is right around the corner, or if you're listening to this now, it's right around the corner for you. Right. Yeah. See, I'm all confused with timing. Actually, I think it's probably happening while you're listening to this. But anyway, that's all I've got to say about this whole thing. Now I'm all confused. Good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.